This is a fan-made amateur recording of the novella Reminiscence-Tracer of Memories, which is a side story for the Final Fantasy XIII series entry Lightning Returns, read by selenityshiroi. It takes place between the ending of the game and the final scene in the epilogue, and thus contains spoilers for the entire series and the ending. The novella was released for free, divided into chapters until its conclusion, originally on the Dengeki website, but is now hosted in full on the Kotaku website. The novella was written by the 13 series lead scenario writer Daisuke Watanabe and is considered canon to the events of the trilogy. However, unlike the other Final Fantasy XIII novels, it has never received an official English translation or release. The translations used for this recording were created by a few different people, and credit and thanks goes to Tensai Shoujo, Goldpanner and Galvea for making this novel available to the English-speaking audience. This recording was created to try and make the novella more accessible to fans and is not intended for profit or personal gain. As it is an amateur recording, it is also not meant to be a professional rendition or replication of the original voice actors, and any voices used in the recording are merely intended to distinguish the dialogue between various speakers. Thank you, and please enjoy. Reminiscence-Tracer of Memories. Prologue. Because I am a journalist, I have the opportunity to hear the stories of many people every day. I disregard age or gender. My interviews can range from powerful figures of national authority to young children that happen to stumble by. The endless variety of stories that I hear are fascinating to me. My work as a journalist can also be considered a hobby of mine. And if you wonder whether I am a successful journalist, I suppose you can say that I am. But apart from my work, there is a mystery that I am chasing. It's a phenomenon that can't exactly be explained using common knowledge. At first, I simply thought it was my imagination, but I just couldn't let it go, and my curiosity thickened. When I began to research the strange cases, I discovered a good amount of incomprehensible coincidences. I became absorbed in searching for the answer to this mystery. I had to know for myself. In order to fulfill my desire, it was essential for me to hear the stories of as many people as I could possibly interview. Because of this, for every interview I conduct, I always ask the same questions. And they are odd questions. Most people are dumbfounded by them and hardly take them seriously. But there are also many people who earnestly provide me with the answers I seek. And as I gather more witnesses, the mystery only grows deeper. Tonight, I am making my way to another interview. A serious interview with an individual who is well informed in social conditions and political economics. After we firmly discuss our occupations, I will incorporate my usual questions into some small talk. I wonder if he will answer them. No, I was inwardly convinced that he would definitely answer them. He is an independent researcher. Although this young scholar is not world-renowned, he is beginning to receive a certain amount of attention within the academic world for his extensive knowledge, particularly in the areas of humanity and society. His name is Estheim. Chapter 1. Estheim. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me today. After I closed our discussions with a sincere bow, I drew in a breath of relief. The interview was an enriching experience. My weariness was accompanied by a strong sense of satisfaction. No, thank you. I enjoyed the talk. Estheim's handsome features retained their kind glow. During the interview, he was consistently calm. He dealt with me, a stranger, in a very affable manner, and even answered my difficult questions with candour. However, I could tell that he was more than just a well-mannered man. Though his language was ever gentle, He possessed a keen and clear view on the realities of society, and contrary to his youth, a placid aura of dignity surrounded him, and I felt as though he had already experienced many, many years in a world that did not accept any sort of sugar-coated ideals. My heart beat violently at the thought of meeting such an interesting individual. I wished to ask him my usual questions right away. I was curious to know how he would answer them. Do you still have time? If it's not too much trouble, I would like to ask you for a few more questions. They're not for the interview, they're for my own purposes. Of course. What would you like to know? Do you remember a different world? This was one of my usual questions. Estheim only narrowed his eyes, as if he was trying to assess something, and I considered it a polite reaction. When I asked these strange questions about warning, I found it natural for people to become perplexed or shocked. Of course, there were also those who grew angry because I asked such stupid questions. Estheim was silent. Perhaps he was waiting for a better explanation before he spoke. I resolved to continue. In other words, do you possess memories of a different life in another world? For example, perhaps you see repeating dreams of events that you do not remember experiencing. Are there words that you cannot forget, even though you have no idea where you heard them from? Are there faces that you recall with fondness, even though you don't know who they are? Images that silently appear in the back of your mind? Memories of a past life, so to speak? I believe it's a fascinating concept, but do you imply that you possess these unusual memories? I had to answer truthfully. Yes, I do. There are images that I see in my dreams, over and over again. They are memories not of this world. They can't be explained. The mystery I had been chasing for so long. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but the memories would never leave my mind. I eventually began to ask other people if they had similar memories of a different world, and to my surprise I gathered a large number of witnesses. That's quite diligent. Now, I don't mean to put a dampener on your search, but it's also possible for these memories you gathered to be simple misapprehensions or subconscious desires of the people. That is probably the case for the majority of my interviews. However, as I gathered more witnesses, I uncovered a truth that could not be ignored. I retrieved my notebook. Inside, I have recorded the testimonies of hundreds. When I compared the memories of the people, I came across several common points. I found cases where people who were born and raised in completely different regions recalled detailed descriptions of the same scenes. In other cases, people would remember sharing the same experiences, even though they were complete strangers to each other. But the most striking similarity was the words. No one could remember what these words meant, but for some reason the people knew them. For example, I opened my notebook and began to read. Cocoon, Valsy, Grand Pulse, Bernevelze. Estheim's eyes flashed for a moment. There is no trace of these people ever meeting each other. Still, many shared similar experiences and explained their memories using identical words. They told me that long ago, humanity left the ground and lived in the skies. There was a floating land in the heavens known as Cocoon. Humanity found safety within Cocoon and feared the outside realm. The heavens are paradise, the surface is hell. This is the story that was repeated numerous times to me. Are all of these people who share the same memories somehow connected at the heart? Or do you suppose that these are all memories of a life they experienced together in a different world?
And that's why you came to me? You wanted to know if I also possessed memories of Cocoon, of a different world.
Actually, it's more than that. When I interviewed the people, your name was mentioned many times.
My name?
For example, Hope led the people and saved us. Hope was the one who supported Cocoon. Hundreds of people recognised their leader as an individual named Hope. This is why I've looked forward to talking with you today. I felt that if I listened to your story, I would be able to uncover a major key in this mystery.
Hope Estheim closed his eyes and let out a deep sigh. Was he trying to ease his tension? Or perhaps he reached a conclusion of sorts? After a while, he spoke. Tell me about your memories, please.
I replied quickly. I spoke about the dreams I had repeatedly seen since as long as I can remember. I was chased out of my hometown and forced onto a train. I tried to escape. I escaped across a frozen lake, but it wasn't cold. Instead of ice, the lake was frozen into crystals. That thing, the foul sea, did it. That's all I remember. Occasionally, I also have dreams where I'm clenching a microphone and reporting something into a camera. And in one of my interviews, a person recalled seeing me report on television. What do all of these memories mean? What do they have to do with us? I need to know.
Very well. I hadn't noticed that his eyes were now open. They were fixed on me. I will tell you about my memories. Back then, mankind lived within a floating continent known as Cocoon. I was also born and raised on Cocoon. I was 14 at the time. The beginning of a journey. Our fate started with the purge. It was not a word I hadn't heard before. Many of the witnesses recalled this incident with fear and anger. He continued to explain his story in detail. At the time, humanity huddled themselves within Cocoon, an artificial celestial object in the sky, and lived luxuriously. However, one ill-fated day, the government of Cocoon, the Sanctum, ordered the deportation of an entire town. Hundreds were driven to their deaths. This was the incident known as the Purge. Hope Estheim was only 14 when misfortune dragged him into the Purge. He was mercilessly tossed into a grim fate. He faced his mother's death and was branded a cursed lessee. The government hunted him down. His mind was filled with revenge. Now that I'm able to look back on it, I was sustaining myself with hate. The despair of losing my mother and becoming a lessee was too heavy for me. I deceived myself and aimed my anger at the closest target. I blamed my mother's death on Snow and despised him for it. If light hadn't stopped me and pulled me back from the abyss, I don't know where I'd be right now. He proceeded to tell me the names of his friends and the names of the people they met during their escape. Lightning, Snow, Sazh, Vanille, Fang, Serah. Some of the names were familiar. I recalled hearing them during my interviews. At the same time, a few of the names were new to me.
What sort of person was Lightning?
She is a strict yet gentle woman, and because she was so kind, she never spoiled me, but steadily watched over me. So she protected and guided you? Was she like a caretaker to you?
At first I was dependent on her. I simply thought she was strong. But in truth, she was also lost and suffering, like me. The moment I realised this, I resolved I didn't just want her to protect me. I wanted to protect her as well.
You became partners that faced the same trials together?
Correct. We all came to support each other, and we managed to overcome a variety of obstacles.
You fought against the gods who reigned over the people, Falsi, Barthantalus and Orphan?
I'm impressed. You've done a lot of research. Back then, the people lived unaware of what their leaders truly were.
I heard that later the truth was made known to the public. It was after you defeated them and saved the world.
Save the world, huh? He spoke as if he were talking to himself. We definitely won against the Falsi, but looking back now, I can see that it was only the beginning.
Do you mean that you continued your journey even after the battle with the Falsi?
We had no choice but to continue. In a new time, a new battle was beginning.
Was that the battle that revolved around the Saviour?
Where did you learn that word?
I heard it while I was gathering witnesses of the other world. Many people still remember this word. My guess is that the word was very important in the other world. I can't stop thinking about it either.
But I never once spoke of the Saviour. You merely guessed that I knew. The Saviour didn't exist during the period when the Falsi ruled, but when I mentioned a new battle, you assumed that it referred to the Saviour's appearance?
That's right. Did I make the correct assumption?
Not exactly, but you came pretty close. The Saviour appeared after many centuries. But before that, there was a long, long battle. The world was threatened with destruction and was largely damaged. This might sound unbelievable, but it was a war that transcended time.
Overcoming time.
I then came to learn of the story that unfurled during the period known as AF, after the fall. When the Falsi reign ended, the safe land of Cocoon became unstable for humanity. The people had no choice but to immigrate and survive on the untamed grounds of Grand Pulse. While fighting with the natural threats of the land, the people managed to carve a functioning civilization within a few hundred years. The history told by Hope Estheim matched my previous gatherings. An organisation known as the Academy led the way to humanity's restoration. A number of witnesses already made me aware of the defining role the Academy held in history, such as the construction of an enormous city. However, Hope's account seemed to relevantly and sequentially connect all of the reports I had heard so far.
This is like hearing the unknown history of mankind.
It was a trying time, especially for those who were used to living in the safe and closed-off environment of Cocoon.
And on top of that, lightning had gone missing. It must have been terribly harsh for you to lose your support.
Well, at the time, our memories were distorted. We thought lightning had died and was protecting Cocoon as a crystal. However, Serah found out the truth. And the moment I learned that Light was still alive, I regained my confidence. I believed I would definitely see her again. All I had to do was push forward until then. Of that there were no doubts in my mind.
Thanks to the strong bond formed between comrades who enjoyed a cruel journey together. Am I right?
Not exactly, but you could say so.
For example, Noel and I were born during completely different eras and raised within contrasting societies. Our pasts had nothing in common, but I immediately connected with him. It was because he and I shared the same goals. We were both doing what we could for a future where everyone could live in peace.
While Serah and Noel plunged into a battle revolving around Caius' Ballad and the Serah Yeul, you led the academy and prepared for the looming catastrophe. You prepared for the destruction of Cocoon and the damage it would cause to the land below by constructing an artificial cocoon. This project to save humanity required hundreds of years of work, and you brilliantly directed it to success.
That project was only possible due to the combined tireless efforts of numerous workers over the course of several generations. I merely oversaw the beginning and the end, but yes, that is correct. It all ended. In 500 AF, Serah and Noel defeated Caius, and the new cocoon was successfully launched into the sky. But that was simply the beginning of an era of destruction.
Was it because of the chaos? During my interviews, many people spoke of the chaos and how the invasion filled the world and could not be stopped. It sounds like the chaos was an enemy that threatened the world.
Yes, we fought against the constant threat of the chaos. And at the final stage of that battle, the story to end that other world began. The last tale of that world. The Saviour, lightning story. For a moment I was at a loss of words. The Saviour's identity, a truth that had weighed on my mind, was suddenly revealed to me, and rather nonchalantly. I managed to control my flustering and asked him,
"Please, tell me more."
But Hope Estheim smiled and shook his head. I can only share up to this point. If you wish to hear the story of the Saviour, you'll have to hear it from Light.
But I
had come so far. I was so close to grabbing the tail of a mystery I was desperately chasing, only to have it escape at the last second.
"Please, at least tell me where I can find her."
I tried to be persistent, but he shook his head again. You should try and find her on your own. You managed to reach me after tenaciously gathering a variety of interviews. I'm sure you can meet Light too. It seemed that I was going to be tested.
"All right, I'll try to find her. But to be sure, lightning is definitely in this world, right?"
I know that all of my comrades are here. I think that if you chase after Light, you will naturally meet her. And when you talk to all of my companions and learn the truth of that world, please come and see me again. Then I will tell you everything I know.
He softly informed me with a smile, but because he seemed so detached, it felt as though he were hiding something.
I couldn't help but ask.
"Perhaps I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that you don't know where lightning is either. Even though you believe that you will see her again, it hasn't happened yet."
Perhaps. His smile didn't change. However, his eyes seemed to be shadowed with loneliness. Before we went on our separate ways, Hope Estheim provided me with one clue. It is the location of one of his former comrades. I want to visit him as soon as possible, but I'll need some rest first. At the time, it felt like I was departing on a light vacation. I had no idea that I was about to begin a long journey. Chapter 2. Sazh Katzroy. An ear-splitting roar comes from behind me. In a moment, the thing has flown over my head, parting the white clouds and soaring far off into the sky. This is an airfield on the city outskirts. It's not an airport for passenger planes. It is used for chartered planes belonging to individuals and media companies, and emergency rescue planes. There is a hangar with an open shutter. Inside, in the middle of a space large enough to fit a concert hall, a brand new aeroplane is parked. The silhouette of the fuselage is unfamiliar. The wings and body form a complex curve. It's a new model craft, still undergoing testing. Standing there is my target. Perhaps preparing for his next flight, he is checking various areas on the body of the craft with a tool in one hand. "Authorised personnel only, miss," he says, without even turning to me, continuing with his maintenance. He must have noticed the sound of my heels. "It's quite all right. I have a coverage permit." "Nice of them to go giving out permits." He begins to grumble to himself with an exaggerated sigh. "Even though this craft is a bundle of trade secrets. Ah, well, ain't my business if you're a spy or something come to steal data on this here new model. I'm just a humble hired pilot. My job is flying the skies. Spy management was not in my contract. Yo, Miss Spy. I'll turn a blind eye if you like. If you get anything from selling the data, at least buy me a beer, yeah?" Even as he makes these frivolous cracks, so light and unreserved, his hands don't stop for a moment. The skill with which he moves through maintenance, swapping each tool for the next, looks like sleight of hand. According to what I found when I researched his personal history, he is remarkably skilled at flying too. But I decide to pretend I don't know and ask anyway. "What a curious design this craft has. Can you really make it fly?" "Yeah, this one flies all right. She does look a little odd, I'll give you that, but she's got special features, and then some. She follows my orders like a lamb, which makes her a real pleasure to fly." He pauses. "Well now, I did used to fly something more fun a long time ago." "I understand how you feel. Normal aeroplanes just don't satisfy you, do they? What you really want to fly isn't aircraft, but airships. Am I right?" He snaps around to face me with enough force that his afro causes a gust of air. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Mr. Sazh Katzroy." His eyes are wide and round with shock. Even his nostrils are flared. Sazh Katzroy. I explain the details behind my data collection, that so far I have listened to many people gathering testimonies regarding the mysterious memories. The strange coincidences in those memories which relate to a world that does not exist in reality. The hypothesis that we, mankind, once lived in this other world. And how, since meeting Hope Estheim, I have come to believe in this hypothesis. "I would like to hear what you have to say, please, Mr. Katzroy." He smiles, showing me white teeth. "Satisfying. I guess if Hope's referred you, I can't say no. Okay then, where do I start?" Just then, a cheerful voice echoes throughout the hangar. "Hey, Daddy!" Saz's smile brightens as he notices the tiny boy running towards us, and he throws his arms out wide. "Oof, what a strong attack. Even Daddy's no match for you," he says, laughing and hoisting the boy into his arms. "What's up? Did you come by yourself today?" With the lady." Sazh turns to me, muttering something like, "Is that so?" "This is my son Daj. Ain't he the spitting image of me?" He pets his son's matching hair with a faraway look in his eye. When I think about it, I went through all of that for Daj's sake.
We could fight because we are human. Sazh invites me inside the aircraft. As the fuselage is still mid-testing, there are experimental devices lined up inside, but there are also seats where we can sit and talk. Daj is in his own little world, playing pilot at the controls. He grips the joystick, corresponding with imaginary air traffic controllers over the radio. Gazing at his son, who is fully enjoying his fantasy of flying the skies, Sazh begins to speak.
Daj was turned into a lassie, and there was nothing I could do but fight. Do you know what lassie are?
Beings bestowed with magic that humans don't have. They lead a cursed existence, feared by the people, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Lassie come in two kinds. You can roughly divide them into lassie who are trying to destroy the society we call Cocoon, and lassie who, on the other hand, are trying to protect society. But, you know, things ain't good for either of them. When you become a lassie, that's it for you. You don't get to go back to your normal life. Even the protected lassie don't get treated like they're human. When Daj became a lassie, he was just 6 years old. When it happened, well, it wasn't like we could just sit on our asses and cry.
I have heard that the attempts made by the Sanctum of Cocoon to kill innocent citizens were also due to background fears of lassie.
Yeah, the purge policy. I entered a purge zone myself, helping Daj after he got turned into a lassie. Meeting Lightning and the others, there was the end of me. One thing led to another, and I got tangled in something that ended up in me getting turned into a lassie myself. So then it was me and my son both. Who'd have thought? We sure got the short straw.
He speaks so casually of the difficult journey he had undergone. It seems like a painful past that anyone would rather not remember, but he peppers it with grumbling and jokes as though he is telling a funny story. I feel as though I now understand how this common pilot was able to survive such a cruel battle. No matter how heavy the reality is, you aren't crushed. You can keep laughing. I'm sure that your composed heart is your strength, Mr. Sazh.
Stop it, you. I'm nowhere near that amazing. I can laugh now that it's over, that's all. At the time, I didn't have a shred of composure. I was especially terrible to Vanille, poor thing. When I found out it was her fault that Daj got turned into a lassie, I lost my head at her. I was even gonna kill her. In the end, I couldn't shoot her, though.
I think both those things, wanting to kill someone, not being able to do it, are very human reactions.
That's a scary thing to say, but I think you're right, really. We got turned into lassie, but we felt the stress because we are human. And we could fight because we are human. The fal'Cie who controlled the world were monsters. They were pretty much gods, and despite that, we humans were the ones who won in the end.
In the Palace of Pleasure. May I ask you about what happened after the ending of the Age of the fal'Cie?
You most certainly may, but I don't really have anything worth saying. Didn't Hope tell you about what happened to me after that?
He said that after your journey, Mr. Sazh, you went missing for 2 years.
Yeah, me and Daj both. We were swallowed up along with the airship we were in by a tear in space and time. And we came flying out into some mighty strange place. Serendipity, it's called. Do you know it?
No,
This is the first time I've heard of it. Phrases along the lines of that world have come up often during my data collection so far, but this is the first time I've heard the name serendipity.
Is that right? Well, I ain't surprised that it's so unknown. That place is kind of like another dimension, or maybe like having one foot in the realm of the dead.
What did you do in such a place?
Gambling. I couldn't find Daj and got told that if I wanted to see him, I ought to bet on the future. I was desperate and I was not going to mess around.
Separated from your son and all alone?
I wasn't alone. I had a fearsome ally. Someone who'd been with me since that first journey. A chocobo chick.
A chocobo chick was a fearsome ally?
Oh yeah, she was the best. She didn't help just me. I hear she gave Serah and Noel a whole lot of support on their travels too.
A chocobo chick? Helping people? I can't quite believe it, so I decide to put the topic aside for now. Sazh's story has arrived at the year AF 500, the year that the old cocoon fell and the artificial cocoon was raised. The conclusion of the travels of Lightning's sister Serah and Noel Kreiss. The Torrent of Chaos.
I finally managed to get Daj and we escaped serendipity safe and sound, but something awful was happening to the world. The deluge of chaos.
Chaos, the name of the enormous energy that they say fills the realm of the dead. It is a dangerous force that brings ruin and destruction. But as it had been sealed inside the realm of the dead, they say it hadn't had much effect on the realm humanity resides in. Until that point.
I heard about all this after the fact, but apparently the goddess Etro was the one who'd been holding the chaos back. But then this piece of work called Caius Ballad tricked Serah and Noel and destroyed the goddess Etro. With nothing to stop the chaos, it came flooding into our world, and that started the age of destruction.
Please allow me to ask about that period. Mr. Hope told me about the events up to the year AF 500. I don't know anything about what happened after the chaos overflowed.
Well, it ain't a fun story.
A heaviness has crept into Sazh's previously witty tone.
In the beginning, we had no idea how serious things actually were. I talked to Hope and Snow, Noel too, and we decided to go up against the chaos. We thought if we worked together, we could figure it out. We could weather this thing if we pushed ourselves one last time, something like that. My old ass aside, the youngsters were heroes, the lot of them. They'd gone past the limits and pulled off miracles so many times before. We had a fire under us. If we staked our lives on it, there's nothing we can't do. I didn't just cheer 'em on, of course. I did what I could. I took down monsters that came from the Chaos regions more than once or twice. But, you know...
His words cut off.
I became useless, he forces out. Daj went to sleep.
Daj, asleep. He says there was no warning. One night Daj went to sleep as usual, and the next morning he didn't wake up. He says that no matter how he called out or shook him, Daj could not be awakened.
I rushed to have a doctor look at him, but Daj was the perfect picture of health. There was nothing physically wrong with him at all. But no matter what we did, he wouldn't wake up, like only his soul was frozen. Comatose, cause unknown. Hope was so worried he had the toppest of top doctors investigate, but nobody could figure anything out. I had too much going on in my head. I couldn't think about anything other than saving Daj. I stopped helping my friends with their work.
That's completely understandable. He's your irreplaceable son, after all.
Before I knew it, a year had gone by. Then 2. Daj kept sleeping, and I got more and more lost in my own head. I don't give a damn about the fight against chaos. If it would help Daj, I'd even sell my soul to the chaos. That sort of thing.
Did you become estranged from all your friends too?
Nah, those guys took good care of me. It was around then Hope rose up as the leader of the people and was trying to make a system to fight the chaos. Snow and Noel were putting their own lives on the line to fight and protect the people. They had those huge tasks on their shoulders, and even then they found so many moments in their busy lives to come and see how we were doing and encourage me. Come on, Pops, don't give up, that sort of thing. I was so grateful. Too grateful to even know how to handle it. Eventually, I started to push them away.
So much kindness was too heavy, perhaps.
And they never once told me to act my age, you know. From then on, I was pretty much a recluse. I went all around looking for a way to wake Daj up. And when I couldn't, I despaired. And when I couldn't take the despair, I kept wondering. It was an endless cycle. I did that for years and years, and I lost all sense of time. It was sometime during that Hope was spirited away.
Spirited away? Do you mean Mr. Hope went missing?
Apparently he left a certain message and suddenly vanished. I don't really know the details myself. I was so fixated on things with Daj, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in the world. But I was aware that Hope getting spirited away marked the beginning of change in the world. It was around then that the teachings of the Order of Salvation began to spread. Vanille and Fang woke up, and a little girl named Lumina appeared. And then, finally, lightning came back.
The Saviour, right? It's a word I've heard many people say during my data collection so far.
Oh, you sure have done your research.
However, I still do not know the fundamental details on this Saviour, such as what exactly they were. Everyone, myself included, has nothing but fragmentary recollections of it. You people, however... I can't hold back my question. It's weighed on me ever since I met Hope Estheim. You and Mr. Hope and the others are special. You have clear memories of the things that took place in the other world. But we are different. Only hazy, vague memories remain. What sort of people were we when we were in that other world? We can't even remember our names. What is the difference? Were your memories so firmly engraved because you people, Mr. Sazh, fought so desperately, perhaps?
I wonder. Well, we did fight desperately, that's for sure. But there's no way we were the only ones. The citizens who got purged, the soldiers in the army, everyone was desperate.
Then what is the difference, I wonder? Is it the power of a lassie?
Sorry, I don't really know myself. But, you know, your memories may be hazy now, but there might be something out there that could make you remember. Something that could answer for you what kind of person you were, I mean.
After the interview, I try asking him about Lightning and Snow's current whereabouts, but he replies that he doesn't know. I don't know whether he truly doesn't know, or whether he does and is hiding it. There's also the possibility that he deemed my asking, stepping into the territory of their pasts and bringing up the memories of their painful struggle, too unpleasant. It seems that I will simply have to find them myself. Suddenly, I sense someone coming in through the hatch of the aircraft. Sazh, who was amusing himself playing at being a pilot, brightens like a switch has been flipped. "It's the lady!" He must have known by the footsteps. "Yep," yells a long-haired woman, giving a joking salute. "Ready for a break? You were all just dying to see me, weren't you?" I can't really tell how old she is. She has a lively, youthful energy about her, but she also has a strangely grand presence.
"Dying to see you, my ass,"
Sazh grumbles, but the woman of unknown age doesn't pay any attention to him. "Well now, Dash, I bet you're getting hungry. Let's chart a course for dinner." "Roger that. On aboard." She leaves the craft with Dash, playing around as they go. Sazh sighs and looks at me, pulling a wry face, as though to say, "Thank heavens." It seems his troubles never end. And he seems happy. I get the feeling he was able to have some warmth shared with him. I state my thanks for his help with my data collection, and just as I have parted ways with him and am about to head back, I am stopped by a shout. Of course, it is the woman of unknown age. She gives me a wide, meaningful grin, takes my hand, and presses something into it. What's this?" "Chocopocolina!" She gives me a thumbs up and a flashy wink, as though that is any sort of answer. I have no clue what she is on about. I find my eyes dropping to the object I have been given. It's a small scrap of paper. Something has been written on it, an address, and what seems to be the name of a store. Perhaps it's some sort of restaurant somewhere. Is this..." I raise my head and the woman is gone. There is only a cottony yellow feather drifting gently in the air. Chapter 3. Get Back, NORA. All that was written on the scrap of paper she, the unidentified woman I had met alongside Sazh Katzroy, had given me was something which appeared to be the name of a store and its location. I had never heard of it. A cafe-restaurant establishment came up when I looked it up. But to me, it only looked like the kind of joint you could find anywhere. It wasn't even in any guidebooks or the like. I couldn't see anything special about it from the photograph. So I decided to go and see it with my own eyes. I took a plane to a beach in the far south. I know it is haphazard of me to make a data collection trip on the basis of one questionable note, without any guarantee of being able to meet anyone. However, for some reason, I cannot curb the feeling that I have to go there. At the airport there, I climb into a taxi and give the name of the restaurant. The driver looks surprised. Apparently, it's a little-known local treasure. They tell me that most of the patrons there live nearby, and that it's rare for non-local tourists and travellers such as myself to visit.
"The food can't be argued with, though."
It seems the taxi driver is a regular patron too. We drive along the coast for a while and arrive at a cafe that faces the water. The name of the place is NORA House. Get Back. The restaurant is neither too crowded nor too empty, and the patrons' friendly chatter creates a pleasant atmosphere. Just as the taxi driver had told me, the patrons seem to be mainly local regulars. They appear to be familiar with the staff, too, creating a ring of casual conversations across the various tables. I have no idea which dishes are good, so I try ordering the NORA special. When I have finished eating, I am bewildered. It had tasted great. I can't believe that this place isn't famous. I wouldn't sincerely compare it to a full course at a first-class restaurant, but as something meant to be enjoyed whilst listening to the sound of the waves, the flavour had been exceptional. It was a stripped-down, honest taste. A nostalgic taste. Yes, nostalgic. But more than simply nostalgic. What is this feeling? I can't properly put into words the sensation welling up mistily in my chest.
I'm sorry, was it not to your liking?
A young waiter has come over and is apologising to me. It seems that my expression had turned sour as I was lost in thought. Oh no, I deny, flustered. It was absolutely delicious. The young man, who has blue hair, seems relieved.
I'm glad, to tell you the truth. I was kind of worried. You're not from around here, are you, ma'am? Our food has a very local taste, so I wasn't really sure how people not from around here would find it.
No, I enjoyed it very much. Thank you. It's a rather nostalgic taste, I think. It aroused a little homesickness, perhaps I could say, or it reminded me of my hometown. It's not a taste I'd expect from something I was trying for the first time. As soon as the words leave my mouth, I realise. No, that hadn't been the first time. I know this taste. I've had it many times before. I remember the taste of the food at this restaurant. There's no mistaking it. It's the taste of her cooking. Her? How do I know it's a her? What was the name of this shop again? I had felt nothing at the name when I first saw the note in question. But now that I've brushed with this flavour, the fact that the name holds a special meaning rises up in my memory. NORA House. NORA. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have heard that word before. It has appeared in several testimonies during my data collection so far. However, compared to keywords such as purge and lessee that affected society in general, it's a minor term by far. So I put it away in the back of my mind. It is a word I'd forgotten, a memory I'd nearly lost.
Ma'am, are you okay?
The blue-haired waiter is staring at me worriedly. I'd sunk into silence. I remember him. Back then, in the midst of the chaos of the battlefield, he had forced down the fear of death and kept his rifle steady. To encourage the people around him and to raise his own spirits, he had cried out, "NORA is even stronger than the army." What is this memory? The roar of the ocean resounds from outside the window. A place deep in my head is going numb. Memories are breaking, one by one, like waves. The world is going dark.
What on earth are you feeding the customers to make them pass out?
Says a deep voice from beyond the darkness. From the voice alone, I can tell it's a man of great physical stature.
You didn't use any spoiled stuff now, did you?
If I did, I'd serve it straight to you, returns a headstrong-sounding voice. It's a woman. Hey, Yuge, how had she been? Do you remember? Did she look unwell? No, she didn't, comes the voice of the waiter. Oh, yes, his name had been Yuge. She ate everything on her plate, too. I'd hate to think it was my cooking, though. Godot, let's take her to the hospital. Come with me.
Okay, I'll take her out first. Lebro, you close up shop before we go.
I'm aware of my body rising up. The man named Godot has picked me up easily. I come to my senses. The ocean is spread out before me. It seems as though I had passed out inside the restaurant and have been laid down on a deck chair on a terrace facing the shore.
How are you feeling?
Asks the big man who had gently lifted me and taken me to the deck chair. His voice is incongruously kind. I feel a great deal better. I think I'm fine now. The three of them look relieved. The muscular giant is Godot, the blue-haired waiter is Yeul, and the black-haired woman is Lebreau. It is her flavour that I remember. Suddenly I need to see something. Is Mr. McKee not in today? I ask.
No, he's out scrounging for parts at the junk shop.
Godot notices it before he finishes his sentence. Lebreau and Yeul both turn pale.
You? How do you know McKee?
Because I remembered. In that world called Cocoon, whether it is a past life or an alternate universe still unclear, I had met these people. In the tragedy where innocent people were exiled upon order from their leaders and had their lives taken in attacks by the army, the upheaval of the Purge, a group of young people were there fighting desperately. They were called NORA, and, despite not being professional soldiers, picked up arms and took lead in fighting the army for the sake of the townspeople. The members of NORA resisted the army's attacks and escaped to the no-man's land of Inner Cocoon with the survivors. These three and McKee were the core members of that group. During the days spent hiding in that harsh environment, each of them held the people up in their own particular way. Godot with his indomitable fighting spirit, Lebreau with her good character in cooking, Yeul with his heartfelt consideration, and McKee with his excellent engineering skills. I was one of those people whom they held up and protected. I reveal the details of my data collection so far, that I am pursuing people's memories regarding the world in which Cocoon existed, that I've met with Hope and Sazh. What I realised while speaking with Yeul. I've remembered you. You're the reckless journalist who sneaked in to expose the reality of the Purge, aren't you? Yes, I nearly lost my life, but you all saved me. And after that, when we were on the run, thanks to everything you did, I was able to protect the footage I'd taken of the Purge monstrosity.
Oh, I remember too. You were the one who blew the lid on the Sanctum and the Fal'Cie's lies by playing the footage of the Purge. You teamed up with Marquis to hack the broadcast, didn't you?
It seems as though Godot has remembered. And you definitely popped into New Bodom to see us after the fall, didn't you? It appears Lebreau has, too. I have a feeling you ate my food lots of times. I'm so sorry, you're by no means a stranger, and yet I forgot all about you. I should be the one saying that. I myself forgot. Not just about you people, but about myself, too. Up until now, I had no idea what sort of person I was when I lived in that world. But the taste of the food at this restaurant made me remember. Who I was, I mean. You mean my cooking can cure amnesia? Is that an honour, I wonder?
It was probably more like shock treatment, since it tastes so shocking.
Excuse you, Godot, would you like to run that by me one more time?
Well...
Well, Godot's huge figure cringes. Somebody comes clattering over. I'm back! What are you all so excited about? Hey, Maki, your timing is terrible. You're interrupting something.
No, you have perfect timing. You saved my ass.
You lost me. Yeul, who had been listening in silence, exchanges a look with me and shrugs as though this is old hat for him. It seems that this is how it is all the time. That's right. These silly exchanges happened back then, too. During our harsh lives on the run, chased by the army and wandering remote areas, they always made trifling conversation with us and made us laugh with them, as though to give us back the ordinary, peaceful lives that had been stolen from us. We reminisce as kindred spirits, as though it's the most natural thing in the world, and I also gained some helpful information.
I remember you,
says Maki when I'm leaving.
Back then you were Miss Aouade, right?
I give a firm nod. It's a different name from who I am now, but it is definitely my name. I can now remember everything. My former self was named Aouade, born and raised in Cocoon, and witness to the moment the sanctum crumbled after the Purge policy riots. I saw with my own eyes the end of the age of the care and rulership of the Foul Sea, and I saw with my own eyes the beginning of the AF period, where humanity tackled the restoration of civilization under our own strength. And now I have been born again, and am living in this world. I want to give my thanks to the unidentified woman who told me about this restaurant. Without her guidance, I would have not encountered that flavour, and I'm sure my memories would not have returned. I have decided. This is how I will continue on from here. No matter how tiny or vague the information, if my instincts tell me something, I will pursue it right to the end. That said, the information I have gained at this restaurant is not vague. I have information on someone with intimate knowledge of the battle concerning the other world. Lebro told me in confidence the whereabouts of Lightning's younger sister, Serah Farron. Chapter 4. Serah Farron. The perpetual snow on the Rocky Mountain peak drips water droplets that eventually become a clear stream that sustains the mountain flowers. The rapids, which crash into several waterfalls as they rush down the gorge, are tempered as they are caught by the pockets of deep forest and discover stillness in deep, dark pools in the shade of the trees. The stream breaks out of the forest and crosses the plains, skirting around hills, and when it arrives at the fields, the current is nothing but gentle. That river, bringing the blessing of the earth to the people, is just over there. This town, which is situated on the bank of the river, has prospered through trade since long ago. There is a university that boasts several centuries of history, famous for a library that holds a collection of books numbering in the tens of thousands. Apparently, the establishment was originally a library that became a university afterwards. According to legend, a particular aristocrat, obsessed with collecting historical documents, bought up all the old documents that he could get his hands on, from ancient maps to handwritten drafts and letters. He invested vast amounts of treasure into set after set of valuable books, and scholars began to visit him, seeking such information. They engaged in vigorous debate, polishing their scholarly principles and theories, and when young people heard rumours of this, they gathered to ask for lessons, and before long a university had formed. Apparently, however, the aristocrat died in bankruptcy. His complete absorption in the collection, to the point of the ruin of his health, could perhaps be blamed on the fickle river. The flow of the stream is like time itself. It seems unchanging, and the water flowing by is always new. What has gone by never returns. As lonesome as one may think this is, the flow of the river cannot be stopped, and time and rivers alike both relentlessly wash away that which is old and that which we miss. Time makes us forget the past, and the years steal away even our lives. Perhaps the aristocrat, living on the bank of the river, understood the ruthlessness of time, and, wanting to save for the world even just a little of that which was disappearing, became infatuated with the act of collecting. If so, then perhaps I too, unusually obsessed with the memories of that world that are lost in the reaches of time, continuing to gather data so that I may record them, am no different from him. Serah Farron. I had arranged to meet Serah Farron in a cafe near the library. We had corresponded regarding my background and the aim of my data collection ahead of time. But before we begin the interview, there's something I want to say to her. So far I've interviewed many people and collected data on their memories of that world. Most people don't remember anything. For those who do, it's only fragmentary. I myself also had vague memories, but they were like a faint dream. They didn't feel real. Serah, who has been listening, seems as though she understands what I'm trying to say. But not anymore? Yes. After listening to what Hope and Mr. Sazh had to say, and meeting everyone from NORA, you changed. I had told her everything that has happened so far. Yes, my memories gradually came back. I remembered what kind of person I had been. I was a citizen of Cocoon, just starting out as a reporter. I exposed the truth covered up by the government, the reality of the purge policy, and ended up on the run from the army. But I was saved by everyone from NORA. That isn't a dream or a delusion, it's a reality I actually experienced in the past. I must have lived in that world. This is what I've been wanting to say to her. Miss Serah, you saved the world. I lived in that world. Thank you so very much for fighting to protect us. When I met Mr. Hope and heard that they had saved the world, it had still felt like some distant affair. But the return of my memories made me see. They hadn't fought to protect some unrelated far-off land. It was the very world I myself had lived in. They saved me. I became able to feel this in my heart. I had felt I must express my gratitude. Serah gives me a wry, distant smile. Me save the world? Well, I don't know. It doesn't seem like she's merely being modest. She seems honestly awkward. People were looking after me the entire time. Ever since I was little, my elder sister did everything for me, mumbles Lightning's younger sister, looking down. The Cursed Lassie, Enemies of Humanity. The sisters had lost both their parents early in life. Lightning, the older sister, joined the army and supported their two-person family. Serah, the younger sister, met Snow Villiers while she was a high school student and began a friendship with him around the same time she decided to continue on to tertiary education. My big sister wasn't very happy about it. She thought Snow and the others in NORA were an irresponsible lot. Well, Snow certainly was a little rough. But I'm sure if she had just talked to him properly, she would have understood right away. You didn't have time for that, though. You unfortunately came into contact with a foul sea, and were turned into a cursed lassie. That's right. I became the enemy of everyone living in Cocoon, of humanity. I had absolutely no desire to harm Cocoon, of course, but even if she held no malice, the general public of Cocoon saw Lassie as hostile, and tried to eliminate them. The surge of the people's emotions in their near-blind fear of Lassie had shaken society and led to the tragedy of the purge policy. And then, in the middle of the purge war, time stopped for her. Right before the eyes of her elder sister Lightning and her fiancé Snow, she transformed into a crystal statue and went to sleep. That was the beginning of the battle that changed the society called Cocoon forever. Lightning, Snow, Sazh, Hope and Vanille, who had been watching the instant Serah fell asleep, and later Fang, despite clashing, fought their destiny. In the end, when they saved Cocoon from destruction, Serah was released from her crystal sleep. However, when Serah awoke, the world had warped in a new way. Lightning had disappeared. Through time, distorted. I heard that when you were revived from the crystal, you were told that Lightning had died. Everyone thought that she had sacrificed herself to stop the collapse of Cocoon. But I just couldn't believe it. I could remember very clearly that my big sister had smiled at me and given my engagement to Snow her blessing when I woke from the crystal. But I was the only one who did. In reality, your memories were correct, Miss Serah, and it was everyone else's in the history of the world that had been distorted. Your elder sister was not dead. She was imprisoned in another world, Valhalla. When you realised the truth, you made up your mind to put the world back onto the correct history, yes? I wasn't thinking quite that deeply at first. Noel was the one who kick-started me. He and Mog came and gave me a message from my sister, and I just rushed off because I would have done anything to see her, Serah recites in a soft voice. And after that, too, it was thanks to Noel pulling me along that I was able to continue the journey. She gives a reserved shrug. Yeah, like I said, I was relying on people the entire time. She speaks of a journey in which she repaired the history of the world spanning several hundred years. If the flow of time is like a river, then that situation was one where the ground had been warped by a great force, changing the current. Serah and her friends had flattened the rocky outcrops that were stopping up the flow and dammed up places that were flooding in an attempt to return the river to the original flow. It is an unbelievable series of events, but it's the gentleness of her tone that makes me believe it's the truth. Gate, paradox, artifact, fragment. These were the things that defined the laws of space and time. The power of the Farseers who could divine the future. The Seers who repeated life and death infinitely, Yeul. And the old enemy who threw the world into disorder trying to save her, Caius Ballad. At the end of the journey, Serah lost her life. And then my big sister protected me again. I died, but she held my soul and protected it. It turned her to crystal. And the two of you were together then, right? Well, I spilled out somehow. At some point I was separated from her. I was asleep, so I couldn't have noticed when it happened. Special beings. Do you and the others had things you can't remember too? Huh? I lived in that world too. As a reporter in Cocoon, my name was Oerba. However, those memories only returned very recently. The level I previously remembered things at was merely vague scenes. I wasn't the only one. I've conducted a great deal of data collection on that world, And not a single person can remember their own name, save for you and the others. Are you and the other special beings who can remember everything from that world?
No, we aren't. I'd forget my own head if it wasn't screwed on. And I'm nobody special. You remembered too, didn't you? Your name and your experiences from that world? You remember them properly now. In that case, maybe you're not the only one whose memories could come back someday if the right chance comes along.
Perhaps the key lies with the existence of you and your friends. I believe my memories returned thanks to the data I was able to collect from you all, starting with Mr. Hope. That is why I want to continue to collect data from you and the others about the things that happened in that world, and find out as much as I can.
What are you going to do with what you find out?
I want to put it into one story and release it to the public. Listening to you all brought my memories back. In the same way, perhaps if I spread the story of that world, then it's possible that more people could regain their memories and...
Wait, please.
Serah's voice, while not loud, has taken on a clear and unprecedented edge.
Remembering that world might actually cause pain to people. It could bring back bad memories, or if they get stuck on memories of an old world that doesn't even exist anymore, what if it holds them back from the life they are living now?
Her words pierce my chest. It feels as though she is talking about me. Am I fixated on and engrossing in chasing memories of a lost world and obsessing with the past, sacrificing my life? As though she has read my mind, Serah smiles sadly.
We do, after all. I remember that world. There are things I wish I could forget, but there are joys I suffered to gain too, so in the end, all my memories are important. I'm glad I can look back at them, but thanks to those memories, we can only ever be who we were in the old world. Sometimes I feel distanced from this new world, you know?
Then is it meaningless to try and know about that world? If I would have been happier forgetting about a bygone past, then
I'm sorry, I wasn't criticizing you. I'm sure you have it harder than me. You had the memories of another life suddenly return to you when you were already living with your feet on this world. You're wavering between the memories of two worlds. Maybe you're the real special being here.
Night has nearly fallen by the time the interview draws to a close. Parting with Serah Farron, I linger on the banks of the river that flows through the town, the night breeze crossing the surface, calming my thoughts. Despite the lights of the town, the current is dark and deep. The river at night is deep black throughout as it flows off into the dark distance. Was my data collection meaningless? If the flow of the river is like time itself, then perhaps the way I've acted, chasing after memories of an age now gone, of a world that no longer exists, is as foolish as trying to scoop out river water that has long since flowed into the sea. Is that water now undrinkable salt water, no matter how you try to take it back? But Serah had told me something. I don't know what following the memories of that world means in this world. But you are different. You remembered that world while living in this one. I think someone like you will be able to find a meaning that's right for you. I hope you can find everything out. So, I will resolve myself. It seems like she understood too. When we parted, she had shaken my hand firmly and told me the whereabouts of Snow Villiers.
Chapter 5. Snow, Villiers. Ayoade waits at a rundown bus stop next to a highway in the middle of nowhere. She looked at the green fields all around her and thought that while the countryside may be a boring place for most everyone else, the lack of action is probably what Snow likes about it, after having thought in that other world for so long. She knew she could have made an appointment in town, but Snow enjoys riding his motorcycle on this stretch of road, and she felt that it would be a good place to hear his story. It was not long until Snow and his motorcycle came into view, and he stopped by the bus stop to inform Ayoade that she will not have any luck catching a bus. The line had been abandoned for some time now. "Not a problem. I was waiting for you."
"You don't look like a hitchhiker."
"I heard about you from Serah Farron." At this, Snow immediately cut his engine. They moved under the shelter of the bus stop to talk, and Ayoade told Snow everything she learned so far. At the end of her story, Snow agreed to tell her everything she wants to know, because anyone who has Serah's trust has his trust too. Snow then related his story from the beginning. When he got to the part where Serah died, he fell silent, and Ayoade, sensing that it must be a painful memory for him, even with Serah alive now, quickly changed the subject, asking to hear about the Age of Chaos. Snow continued with his story during this time, and Ayoade found out that right after the chaos began taking over the world, everyone took shelter in the new cocoon, the arc in the sky. Hope, with his charisma, naturally became the leader, and within the academy, the Council of Rebirth was established. Hope was the brains in charge of the big picture, while Noel, Snow, and Sazh, who flew about in his airship, dealt with the monsters. But as it turned out, mankind not being able to age became the bigger problem. Ayoade had already guessed that at some point everyone must have been immortal, because some of the people she interviewed claimed to have lived for hundreds of years. But Snow corrects her. They were not immortal, since it was still possible to die. And with no children being born, humanity was doomed to extinction, something the Council of Rebirth did their best to prevent.
"Things were going downhill. The lands we could live in were consumed by the chaos, little by little, and even Benevelza up in the sky couldn't escape the damage."
"Benevelza? I keep hearing this word, but what does it mean?"
"It's the name of the star Hope built, and also the name of the Radiant God, our greatest enemy."
"Huh?"
"I'll get back to that later. Anyway, the artificial cocoon began to show wear and tear, and we knew it wasn't going to be able to shelter us forever. This is when Fal'Cie Pandemonium showed up. It sprang into action and began working at great speed on the lands outside of our cocoon."
"What kind of action do you mean?"
This was a Fal'Cie that made things. It began cultivating the lands beside the sea and building homes for people to live in, even though no one asked it to. And in no time at all, it built something like a city, and then another one a little ways apart from the first. The first eventually became known as Luxarian, and the second became the foundation for Yusnan.
"So everyone in the artificial cocoon moved into the cities the Fal'Cie built?"
Not at first. We were suspicious and stayed away from it for a long time. You can't trust a Fal'Cie, and there wasn't a message or anything either. Whilst we stayed on the alert and waited to see what it would do next, the Fal'Cie began its next course of action. It built a plant in Yusnan and established a supply chain. Food, fuel, the works. The Fal'Cie didn't say anything, but it was trying to bait us all right. "Leave your new cocoon and come here," you could almost hear it say.
Snow explained that it was a difficult decision to make.
After years of debate, the Council of Rebirth decided on the exodus to the lands outside, their reasoning being that if everyone continued to live inside the already deteriorating new cocoon, nobody would live for very long. Also, the new cocoon formed at the core of all their technology, so if it were to suddenly stop working, it would spell disaster for mankind. Having everyone move outside and gradually learn to feed and shelter themselves, while also making use of Falsi pandemonium supplies, was their best bet protecting Cocoon and the technology inside.
We relied on the Falsi to feed us, and it was like we were back to being livestock raised by their kind. And sending people out of the new cocoon, even though it was still technically safe, into the world outside, that was like the purge all over again, I thought. Still, there was no other way. We led the first expedition to the surface. We tried to be self-sufficient, so we wouldn't depend on the Falsi too much, and all that time we fought the chaos. Every single day it was a fight with no end, and for years that was how we lived.
Sounds like it would be easy to lose your sense of time living like that. I'm reminded of what Sazh said. He told me that he fell into despair when Daj wouldn't wake up, and wandered the lands for years.
I wanted to help the old man, but there was nothing I could do. It was the same for me. I couldn't see a future, and I didn't know how to save Serah, or where Lightning was. Every day was a nightmare. Noel was trapped in his despair too. He blamed himself for what happened to Serah, and the mess the world turned into, and couldn't get over it. He shouldn't have, because he didn't do anything wrong.
And how was Hope doing?
He was brilliant. He looked tirelessly for a way to stop the chaos, and never complained, not even once. I was able to keep it together and do my best because he never abandoned hope. It's just like how his parents named him. He was Hope given form. He was now, you may think I'm exaggerating, but he was the hope for all of mankind. And because of that, he was taken.
By taken, do you mean how Hope was spirited away and disappeared without a trace? I heard from Sazh that Hope's disappearance was what caused the world to change.
He suddenly disappeared, and the Council of Rebirth fell into disarray. There were debates, all right, but no decisions were made. I tried to restore order, but I was far from being Hope. There was fighting between factions, and petty squabbles began to eat away at the fabric of our society. Everyone was on edge. Around that time, I was responsible for the manufacturing plant at Yusnan, and it took all I had to stop a war over the supplies from erupting.
In the middle of all the confusion, the Council of Rebirth lost the people's trust, and in its place, the teachings began to spread.
It was the creed of the Radiant God. Even if the world ends, he will save you and lead you to a new world. This was the doctrine touted by the Order of Salvation, which came into being around then.
I've heard of the Order in my investigations.
You must have, because the number of believers in the Order kept increasing. And once organized, they began to exert control over society. As for the name of the god they worshipped, go on, take a guess.
Benevelza.
Panic began to spread after Hope disappeared, and those in despair clung to Benevelza's teachings, hoping for salvation. You see now why Hope was spirited away, don't you? Benevelza was the one who stole hope from us. God took mankind's hope away so he could sway the hearts of men instead. And then the Order started pursuing monopoly of all the supplies. I wasn't about to let them do that, but at the same time, I didn't want to have civilians fighting each other. Outwardly, I pretended to concede to the Order's authority, and they gave me the title of patron. But I had them agree to 2 conditions. Yusnan was to remain independent, and the Order had no business meddling in what goes on at the plant.
Sounds like you had a lot of politicking to do.
Doesn't sound like the old me, right? Even a fool learns a few things after living some 100 years.
Snow went on to explain that as the patron of Yusnan, he busied himself playing cat and mouse politics with the Order. There was so much work to be done that he had less and less time to meet up with Sazh and Noel, and eventually they no longer kept in touch. Some 150 years later, Vanille and Fang woke up and were taken into custody by the Order.
Bonnevel's hand was definitely behind that too. Falsy pandemonium turning up, hope going missing. Everything was part of God's plan. And the finishing touch was the Saviour.
Snow explains that, according to the teachings of the Order, the Saviour purifies the souls of men and leads them to the new world. What do they mean when they say the soul is purified?
It means you forget everything. The people who have died, your past memories. Let's forget them all and be reborn in the new world.
In that case, the reason why we can't recall our memories from that other world, that's because our souls have been purified, isn't it? In the process of being reborn from that other world with the cocoon to this planet here, the Saviour, she... Snow waited for Ayoade to finish, and she, thinking she had finally hit upon the truth, asked, "Lightning erased our feelings and memories, didn't she?" There was an edge in Snow's look for a brief moment, but the tension disappeared at once, and Snow informed Ayoade that she came to the wrong conclusion. Lightning fought Bonnevelza so that everyone could hold on to their memories, and Ayoade herself was proof of that. Me?
Your memories didn't disappear, you just couldn't remember them properly. And you recovered your memories in the process of interviewing us, didn't you?
True, but in that case I'm all the more confused. I began my investigations hoping to learn the truth behind my vague memories. But after meeting all of you and getting back my memories of that world, I now have a different set of questions. What is this world I currently live in? Why did the world turn out this way? Now I think the real purpose of my mission is to find out the answer to this.
Hey, so you do know what you're doing. Any doubts you have to figure out the answer for yourself. That's the path you've chosen, after all.
Snow assured Ayoade she will have her answers once she meets Lightning. She asked Snow for Lightning's location, but Snow dodged the question.
No can do. There's an order to these things, you know. You try barging in on Lightning and lobbing your questions at her just like that out of the blue. She's real scary. She'll send you running.
I already suspected Snow of not actually knowing where Lightning was for a moment, but she was also certain he was not one to lie for no good reason. Well, thanks for the warning. She sounds like a difficult person. I don't know if she'll even hear me out if I get to meet her.
Don't worry. Don't just ask questions. Let her know how you feel, too. She'll answer that, I'm sure.
My feelings?
That's how I was, too. I held back and wasn't able to trust Lightning when she returned as the Saviour. So I opened up. I revealed how I felt to her, and that was how we understood each other.
I already tried to think of what she wanted to tell Lightning, but she drew a blank. Snow then decided he would arrange for Ayoade to meet Noel Kreiss. Chapter 6. Noel Kreiss and Paddra Yeul. It was 7 in the morning, and Aoede was navigating her way through a market that had already begun showing signs of activity. She was somewhere in the subtropics, and all around her people were dressed in colourful ethnic costumes. From the market she entered the back road, and at the end of the alley there was a wooden 2-store house, a little plain but far from shabby. It was an open structure suited to the humid climate, and the door might as well have not been there. Aoede called out a greeting as she entered the house, which turned out to be a lot better kept than expected.
"So it's you."
A voice called out from the second floor, and there, leaning on the railing of the open stairwell, stood a young man. The sunlight from the window leaves his face in shadow, but his eyes gleamed in the dark. Aoede thought to herself that these eyes, clear yet inscrutable, were like those of a hunter coolly sizing up his prey, like the eyes of a bloodhound or a feline. In a flash, the young man jumped from the stairwell and, without making a sound, landed on his feet before Aoede. All this reinforced her impression of Noel Kreiss as a cat.
"I heard from Snow. So you want to know about the old world?"
Yes, if I may. I used to be a part of that world too.
"So I heard, but I've never had the opportunity to talk about it. No one would believe a story like that."
Without relaxing his stance, Noel asked Yeul, who was standing in a doorway behind Aoede, for her opinion. Yeul looked at Aoede for a long moment and decided she could be trusted, because she would believe them. Noel, with a sigh, noted that if Yeul says so, it is fine. Aoede heard the gentle tone in his voice and thought that, for Noel, Yeul's opinion and judgment must come before everything else. They sat down and began to talk. Yeul sat stiffly, her back ramrod straight, while Noel was the very picture of relaxation. But Aoede knew she must not be deceived. Underlying Noel's relaxed posture is the assured knowledge that he can handle anything that might conceivably happen. It occurred to Aoede that Noel was not only like a cat, but also had the aura of a vigilant guard dog. Noel related his story, his life in 700 AF, the Farseers, Caius, and his time-travel adventures with Serah.
Serah's death, the destruction of the world. It wasn't the fault of Caius alone. I had a hand in it too.
But it was a trap set by Caius, wasn't it? You just didn't know it then. Snow told me that it wasn't your fault.
It's one of those things you can't shrug off as inevitable, and it isn't something you allow yourself to forget either. I couldn't stop thinking that there might have been a different way, or how I might have done better and prevented all of it. I had 5 centuries, more than enough time to second-guess myself and regret my actions. Eventually, I even came to understand how Caius must have felt when he tried to destroy the world for Yeul.
Aoede was surprised at his frank confession, and Noel began to talk of how he led his life in the Age of Chaos. Aoede explains that she has heard about the Council of Rebirth and how it was the core of human society.
It was thanks to Sazh and his pep talks, you know. When things look ugly, it's time for you young'uns to step up. Things like that. I was grateful to have work to do, to fix my mistakes. I couldn't think my way out of the darkness, and without something to do, I would have lost it.
You were deeply troubled by what you'd done to the world, I see. But I also heard that you teamed up with Snow to fight the monsters originating from the chaos.
It wasn't just the two of us. A lot of people joined in the fight too. We formed something like a patrol. Snow was our captain, but I guess the boss describes his role better. He rallied the troops and was the first to charge in whenever there was danger.
Were you his second in command?
Technically I was, but most of the time I broke off from the squad and went at it solo. Recon and infiltration missions, hunting down monsters, that sort of thing.
So you were a one-man flying column, or should I say a lone hunter?
It's not as cool as it sounds. To be honest, I was a little afraid of showing myself in public. I damaged the world, and because of that I could never bring myself to work at the center of society like Hope and Snow. I was ashamed, felt I had no right to the light of day, so I decided to do my best for society from the shadows. Snow understood, and he was okay with letting me do things my way.
So the both of you trusted each other. But I heard that when you first met Snow in your time travels, the two of you didn't get along.
That was a given. He was too reckless. At the time, I was desperately trying to do my best to protect Serah, and yet there he was, biting off more than he could chew, and this close to kicking the bucket. I thought, I'm trying my best to protect your sweetheart here, and you're going to up and die on her first? It was only natural for me to want to say a thing or two to his face.
You couldn't stand his type?
Not exactly. I think I must have known deep down that he was a good guy. Maybe I was afraid he was going to push himself too far and buy it, so I gave him a piece of my mind, even though it really wasn't any of my business.
I already suggested that Noel now saw things as they are, and was able to understand how he and Snow felt back then.
He was definitely reckless, but he wasn't just that. He drew out the best in people. He never grew out of being the kid who thought he was the king of the sandbox, and everyone around him had to make sure he stayed out of trouble. And I think maybe all of us who watch over him end up being inspired by him to do our best. That's what I came to understand in the Age of Chaos. After years, decades of fighting, when everyone was exhausted and about to throw in the towel, Snow was out there on the front lines, risking his life, and showing all of us what the back of a fighter must look like. He risked his life to put the wind back in our sails, and we found courage in his actions.
I see. He was the hero whose actions spoke louder than words.
I couldn't protect the woman he loved, Serah, and he should have hated me for it. And yet never once said a word of accusation.
Noel briefly paused here, and continued a little shakily.
That was too much for me to bear. It even occurred to me that it would have been easier on me if he'd yelled at me. Serah, the chaos, everything. If only he had yelled, "It's all your fault," I might have been able to defend myself, tell him, no, it's Caius' fault, shrug it all off. I went as far as imagining that. You must think that's very selfish of me.
I already was sympathetic. She mentioned that was also what happened to Sazh. He felt guilty for being miserable and began to distance himself from the others.
First I've heard of it, so that's why Sazh stopped meeting us. But I know how he must have felt. After 300 years living in the Age of Chaos, I began to see everything in a negative light. And then that happened, and that was the final blow.
You mean Hope being spirited away?
I now know that Benevosa was behind it, but back then we had no way of finding out what happened. I thought, there's no way Hope abandoned all his work and disappeared. He was too dutiful to do something like that. And he'd worked so hard to save the world. And besides, Hope wasn't the only one who disappeared. The scientists working on their research in the new cocoon also went missing. All of them.
What kind of research were they doing in the new cocoon?
It had something to do with controlling the chaos. You'll have to ask Hope for the details. Anyway, there was no explaining it, and the Council of Rebirth fell to pieces trying to pass the buck around. It was dangerous times upon our society, and Snow and I had our work cut out for us, trying to maintain public order. Eventually we got so busy we no longer had time to meet up.
In the meantime, God's salvation began to seduce the hearts of the people. Almighty Benevolza will lead us all to the new world. Those were the teachings of the Order whose influence began to spread, yes?
The Order had the most to gain with Hope's disappearance. I thought it was possible that the Order did something to him, perhaps even going so far as kidnapping him. So I went on an infiltration mission to find out.
And did you find any evidence of that?
Not a single one. Still, the Order's way of doing things didn't sit right with me. They said they were saving souls, dressed their words out pretty, but the moment they were in control, they cracked down on everyone who defied them. So I snuck into their cathedral and, well, gave them a stern warning. Because of that, some people began to call me the Shadow Hunter. Meanwhile, I heard that Snow was trying to prevent the Order from monopolizing the supplies, and he chose to compromise to avoid direct conflict with the Order. When I found out he accepted the title of patron from the Order, I thought it sold his soul to the teachings of a shady god. But deep down, I must have known what he was thinking. Battling it out with the Order would mean men killing each other, and the way he handled it allowed him to retain control of Yusnan and the manufacturing plant, while also keeping the Order at bay. I knew that was the truth, but at the same time, I didn't want to understand.
Without hope to hold them together, the old friends drifted apart. 13 years before the end of the world, Vanille and Fang woke up, but Noel had virtually nothing to do with them. At the same time, rumours of the Saviour began to spread.
That was when that girl Lumina appeared. Nobody knew where she came from. It was a mystery, because no children could have been born with the chaos around. And then the Oracle Drive turned up.
I've heard about Oracle Drives from Serah. They are the recordings of future prophecies seen by the Farseers, by every generation of Yeul.
I know it all too well, and that was exactly why I was deceived.
Deceived?
It was a fake prophecy Lumina made. The things recorded, they were nothing more than the images of a future I wanted badly. Meeting Yeul again, living our lives together in peace. It was a future I wanted to make happen. And to have it, I would have done anything.
I suppose you were looking for your salvation in the prophecy. What drove you to it?
Despair. It was beyond what I could shoulder, so I clung desperately to hope. I thought to myself, I don't care if I have to stain my hands with blood. The prophecy, it told a certain story. If I defeat the Saviour, if I defeat lightning, a future of peace awaits us. So I tried to kill her.
You had no qualms about fighting lightning.
Don't you remember? I said I know how Caius must have felt. Serah's death, the destruction of the world. I continued to beat myself up over my past mistakes. And it was despair I held on to. I could no longer think positive. It left a bad taste in my mouth.
You lived for too long without any peace of mind, and because of that you chose the path of destruction.
I think it was the same with Caius. It didn't matter how many times he lost Yeul, he couldn't even kill himself out of despair because he was immortal. And that was why he made the wrong choice and decided to destroy the world. I was like that too. Looking back, I wasn't the only one who lost it. Snow and Sazh, they each had their own problems and couldn't see their way out. All of us were a little unhinged in our own way.
Then for the first time in the interview, Yeul interjected. But the Saviour, Lightning, returned and freed the souls of the people that had up until then been trapped. What were you doing at that time, Yeul? You should have died in 700 AF. My soul, our souls, were with Caius, together with the souls of all the Seresses named Yeul. We were a vast number of souls merged together, and because of that we did not have a structured consciousness or will. We existed only as a carefree, innocent desire.
She was in the shrine in the wildlands, not so far away from Yusnan or Luxarian,
Noel said.
I had no idea she was so close to where I was.
Does that mean Caius lived there too? He was neither alive nor dead, Yeul explained. The feeling of the many Yeuls conflicted with each other. Some Yeuls thought he had suffered despair for too long, and wished for death to set him free. But there were also Yeuls who did not want him to die, who wanted to be with him. Our contradicting feelings fused with the chaos and imprisoned his soul. They did not allow him to fade away and die, and chained him down as a consequence. Was Caius's soul also reborn into this world? He is not in the world you see. Caius is in the realm to which souls return. If you die, I am sure you will meet him. So, if he's in the realm of death, he protects the souls of the dead, shepherds them into a new life, rules the unseen realm. That is what he does. I already wrapped up the interview, and the three of them paid a visit to the market. It was just about lunchtime, and the marketplace was bustling with activity. There were looks of deep contentment on the faces of both Noel and Yeul, and I already thought she knew why they chose to live among all this hubbub. For two souls who must have known only an age of loneliness, the lively atmosphere must be a source of great comfort to them. Yeul, who had been stiff and careful with her words in the interview, was now an entirely different person. She danced through the streets, pointing out stands curiously to Noel, with eyes that sparkled and a laugh that came easily. Noel, a gentle look on his face, watched over her. I already was convinced that it would be a very, very long time before the two of them reunited with Caius Ballad in the unseen realm. They had lunch together, but before they parted ways, Noel wrote where to find Fang and Vanille in Ayoede's notebook.
You'll find Fang and Vanille here. Snow actually asked me for a favour. He told me that if after meeting you I considered you to be trusted, I should let you know where the two of them live.
Noel then lightly complained about Snow and his lack of responsibility. He should not have left such an important decision to someone else. But even as he said these words, there was a faint smile on his lips, and a nostalgic look in his eyes. Chapter 7. Oerba Yun Fang and Oerba dia Vanille. The dry winds kicked up a veil of sand. Just beyond, I already spied the shadow of a steeple in the distance, and knew that she was approaching the ruins, her next destination. She had just been to the village, little more than a collection of cattle ranchers among the rocky wilderness. The village community was small enough for every face to be familiar, and it was thanks to this that I already quickly tracked down the two women. The villagers told her that they were often seen in the ruins, some distance away from the village. As Aoede made her way there, she thought she understood why these two women had taken a liking to the place. The ruins standing among the desolate landscape reminded them of home. Aoede entered the ruins and found herself in a great stone hall, where the walls are thick and sturdy, and the sound of the biting winds seemed deceptively far away. Although the ruins had been abandoned for many years, Aoede noted that they are considerably well preserved. The place was surprisingly clean, and might have even been habitable with a few pieces of furniture. She had to remind herself that the two women she was looking for did not actually live there. Aoede took a deep breath and called out, "Is anyone here?" Her voice echoed throughout the empty hall. Before the last of the echoes faded, a voice speaks up from behind Aoede. "Stop shouting. It makes a damned lot of noise." Aoede was caught unawares. Just a moment ago, she could have sworn there was nobody there. She turned to find a tall woman with dark skin and black hair, and she immediately knew she had the right person. "The people down at the village gave us a heads up, said some woman was trying to sniff us out. Who told you about this place, you little weasel?" It was Noel. Wait, to be precise, I met Snow before him, and he had this message." Overwhelmed by the hostility emanating from Fang, Aoede fumbled to find her words, and the resulting explanation was too cryptic to earn points in her favour.
"The hell are you talking about?"
Fang was all the more suspicious of Aoede, and just as she thought Fang was about to throw her out,
"Did I hear that right, miss? Have you met Snow and the others?"
a voice piped up, full of innocence, and the tension in the air was shattered at once. Aoede found out that she had just been saved by a red-headed woman with pigtails, peeking out from the shadows of the hall. Aoede took this opportunity to compose herself, and that time the introduction went well. After all the practice she had, Aoede was getting to be an old hand at telling her story, and even Fang was persuaded. Fang and Vanille began to tell their story. Eventually, they arrived at the point where they saved Cocoon by turning into Crystal.
"We entered Crystal status and went to sleep, but we were able to watch the people go about their lives on Grand Pulse,"
Fang tells Aoede. "Now that you mention it, Serah told me that in the middle of her travels through time the both of you saved her."
"Oh yes, I remembered that," Vanille said. "She asked for help in the world of dreams. I've always felt that Serah and I share a connection somehow. I mean, when we first opened our eyes on Cocoon, Serah was the first person we met."
"Yeah, it was our fault Serah became a l'Cie," Fang frowned. "We wanted to save her, make it up to her. If we could have fought by her side, maybe things would have ended differently, and Serah wouldn't have died."
"But at the time, the both of you were the pillar holding up Cocoon, and there was nothing you could do. After that, how did the two of you escape when the world was taken over by the chaos?" Hope saved us, Vanille tells Ayoade. Right before the cocoon fell apart, they cut us out of the pillar and sheltered us. You know that organization Hope created. What's it called again? The Council of Rebirth, yes? And after that, the two of you kept sleeping? That's right, we slept for another 500 years. We woke up 13 years before the end of the world. We truly wanted to thank Hope for saving us, but...
By that time, more than 150 years had already passed since Hope was taken by God. Fang shook her head. The Council of Rebirth had been gone for years, and the Order of Salvation were the ones running things. Can you imagine what a shock that was? We finally woke up, and what did we find? The world in shambles. People throwing themselves at the feet of a strange god. I thought, what the hell is going on here?
But it had to happen sooner or later. We were fine because we were asleep, but everyone else had already lived through 500 years of a dying world. You can't fault them for wanting to depend on something. They were so tired inside, Vanille continued. And that got me thinking, if the teachings of the Order are a lifeline for the people, well, maybe I should help them out too. I heard that during those years, you, Vanille, were called the Holy Saint of the Order of Salvation. I suppose that, like a saint, you wanted to help as many people as possible when you cooperated with them. Well, yes, but as it turned out, I wasn't working with them at all. I was being used. Used?
The Order exploited Vanille's feelings, Fang interjects. They welcomed Vanille into the cathedral, fed her pretty lies and things she wanted to hear. She's the type who takes everything seriously, and she believed everything they told her, never suspecting anything. She took it into her head that she could help everyone so long as she did whatever the Order wanted.
That's always been one of my flaws, Vanille sighed. You know how it is. You keep thinking you have to fix your weaknesses, but in the end you can't ever change. My feelings were caught in a dead end, so before I knew what I was doing, I'd bought into the Order's... no, God's plans. God? You're talking about the Radiant God, Benevelza? Snow said that Benevelza was also the one behind your awakening from the crystal. Is that true?
Who knows? Fang shrugged. Seems the most plausible explanation, but for all we know, Lumina could have been the one behind it.
Lumina? The girl who appeared when the two of you woke up? The first child to appear in 500 years, in a world where children could no longer be born? Put it this way, you can't help thinking of her as some kind of holy child of God.
Holy my ass. She was a bloody little brat, as if she were chaos personified. But for whatever reason, she was quite attached to Vanille.
Lumina may have acted like a spiteful prankster, but really, she was a lonely girl who wanted attention, Vanille mused. Maybe she woke us up because she wanted someone to indulge her.
All the same, Lumina could have been working under Benevelza's orders too. Fang dismissed the question at hand. In any case, when Lightning and I were looking for the Holy Clavis, Lumina sabotaged the search.
You took off for the desert right after waking up from the crystal?
No, I spent a few years with Vanille, under the Order's care. We lived in Exarion, where the cathedral was. In a way, those were the easiest days of our lives, after all we'd been through. Our lives in Oerba, on Grand Poles, where we were born and raised, those days were just one hardship after another. And when we became Lassie, charged with taking down Cocoon, well, A hard life doesn't even begin to cover it. So you see why I thought taking it nice and easy and Luxarian wasn't such a bad idea. And there were a number of decent men and women among the followers of the Order.
They treated us very well, Vanille said.
That they did, Fang admitted. But even if the regular clergy were nice people, the ones on the top of the Order were rotten garbage. I realized that if things went according to their plans, Vanille would be in danger. So I left Luxarian. I wanted to take Vanille with me, but you could have taken a lever to her and she still wouldn't have budged.
At the time, I thought it was best to stay with the Order.
Vanille looked away.
I can be really stubborn sometimes over the strangest things, even though I'm just a pushover the rest of the time.
Oh, please, when were you ever a pushover? Fang scoffed. Anyway, in the end, I left Luxarian alone and headed for the desert. I was planning on looking for the Holy Clavis all by myself, but then I bumped into these bandits, bunch of Tomb Raiders. So I decided to throw in with them and comb the ruins together.
She makes it sound like a partnership, but really, I heard she beat them into submission, Vanille giggled. The bandit gang, Monoculus. They tried to mess with her, so she gave them a good thrashing, and that made her their boss.
Is that what it looked like? Well, anyway, it's true we had a little talk. The next thing I knew, the bandits were groveling on their knees, begging, "Please be our boss." Didn't see a reason to refuse, so I became the leader of Monoculus. Fang smirked.
And then you led the bandits on a search for the Holy Clavis. How did the excavations go?
Awfully. The ruins were sealed. We couldn't get close to the crucial areas. Lightning was the one who cleared the way.
Lightning came back to us after Fang had been gone 4 or 5 years, I think,
Vanille mused.
That's right. Without her powers of the Saviour, we'd never have broken that seal on the Holy Clavis. Fang nodded.
What kind of powers did the Holy Clavis have? The power to summon the souls of the dead and to purify them,
Vanille explained.
You'd think with a description like that it would be something sacred, but the Order had a terrifying use for the Holy Clavis in mind. But I was a fool. I wasn't able to see through their schemes.
If the Order, no, if Benevelza had gotten his way, the souls of the dead would have been erased, never to be reborn. Everyone would have forgotten all about the old world, I bet. Fang shook her head with a frown.
But as it is, a lot of people, myself included, hold on to memories of that other world deep within our hearts. That means all of you put a stop to Benevelza's plans. My soul must have been saved at that moment by all of you.
I didn't do anything. Vanille narrowed her eyes.
All I did was make Fang worry and have Lightning show me the way.
Lightning saved us, Fang said. All of us. At this point, Oerba was no longer able to keep her excitement in check. She forgot she was here to hear their story, and instead was driven by thoughts of meeting Lightning.
In that case, I would very much like to meet with Lightning and hear her story. My interview with Hope started me on this journey, and I've met Sazh, Snow, everyone who fought by your side. But Lightning, she's the only one I can't get in touch with. Looking back on the interviews so far, it seems to me that she, the Saviour, is the person at the heart of everything, the one who saved that other world.
Fang and Vanille stole a glance at each other, then gave a slight nod. Oerba watched the two of them and realised that for two people who have lived through an immeasurable length of time together, even the briefest look is enough for them to understand each other. And what are you going to do when you meet Lightning?
Fang inquired. Ayoedo felt the no-nonsense question like a spear jab. Flustered, she failed to keep her voice steady as she explained herself. Well, naturally I'd want an interview. And there's something I want her to know, too. How grateful I am. Lightning was the one who saved our souls in that other world, correct? If she saved us, I want to thank her for that.
Well, she already knows you're thankful because you're here, alive.
Vanille, in a gentle yet confident voice, explains what Fang means. This is what Lightning wished for from the very bottom of her heart. She wanted everyone to be able to live with their eyes on the future without being stripped of their past. For that, she battled God, and her victory won her this world, a new world for everyone to live in.
As long as everyone's happy living here in this world, Lightning's wish has already come true. No need to run after her waving your gratitude on a flag. She wouldn't want something like that if you ask me, Fang noted.
In other words, you're telling me to give her some space? That I should leave Lightning alone?
I'm saying that if you manage to find her on your own, well, good for you. You won't hear me complaining. You're free to look for her.
What goes for you also applies for Lightning, Vanille smiled. She's free at last, too. In any of her other usual interviews, Ayoedo would have continued pressing for information on Lightning, but with Fang and Vanille, she found herself unwilling to upset them. The two of them sacrificed themselves to support Cocoon, where she lived, and for that she felt indebted to them. Still, Ayoedo was not going to give up her quest to meet Lightning. She decided it was time to return to the beginning, time to ask for the final piece of the story from the man who stood by Lightning's side during the 13 days before the end of the old world. Hope Estheim. Chapter 8. Hope Estheim. Chronicle of a Chaotic Era. Ayoedo recalled what Hope said to her at the end of his interview. Come back to me when you find out the truth behind that other world, and I will tell you everything I know. That was the beginning of Ayoedo's journey. In her quest for memories of a world that no longer existed, she met his friends, and in the midst of it all, recovered her half-forgotten memories. My name was Ayoedo, back in the old world. You and I, we were part of the same era, for I was also caught up in the purge. Ayoedo began her introduction in this manner on her second visit, and Hope Estheim smiled quietly in response. Before they began their second interview, Ayoedo summed up everything she learned from the interviews so far. The purge, the battle for Cocoon, Serah and Noel's journey to fix the timeline, and so on. She did this to prove that she did, in fact, discover the truth behind that other world, as Hope had asked her to do. She wrapped up the story at length. Hope nodded, deep in thought. I'm impressed by your research. There were even certain things I didn't know myself. So you truly did meet everyone. Ayoedo wondered if this means she passed his trial, but at the same time she could not find it in herself to accept the compliment. Not everyone. In the end, I wasn't able to meet the most important person of all. I see. You were unable to find light. There was a note of disappointment in his voice. Ayoedo wondered if Hope was disappointed in her for ultimately not having what it took to meet Lightning, or if he knew not where Lightning was either and hoped that Ayoedo would be able to track her down. She did not have time to puzzle out the answer, however, because Hope snapped out of his inner musings. Allow me to honour the promise I made. You learned of the truth behind that other world. I will tell you everything I know. He conjured, seemingly from thin air, a thick folder and placed it on the table. There was nothing on the cover save for the title, which was short and straight to the point. Chronicle of a Chaotic Era. These are my memories. The Council of Rebirth. Oerba and Hope began by talking about the dawn of the Chaotic Era. I assume you already know what happened after Serah and Noel defeated Caius Ballad.
The world was flooded by an outpouring of the chaos because of Caius' schemes, and Serah lost her life. That was the beginning of the Age of Ruin. Eventually, the old world began to sink into the ocean of chaos, and, for mankind, the cycle of life and death was also destroyed. That's pretty much what I gathered from everyone else.
That's correct. Mankind lost its time, and it was no longer possible to die of old age. But in exchange, new lives, that is, children, they were no longer born. This unusual phenomenon was confirmed right after the chaos began to invade.
So it didn't take a few years for you to discover this?
No. As soon as the fight was over, I assembled each and every one of the Academy's scientists and had them investigate in depth. At the time, all the citizens had been evacuated and were living inside the new cocoon. But even though everyone was safe for the moment, it was necessary to draw up plans for the long term. That was why we hurried to analyse what was happening to the world and what kind of effects the endless outpouring of chaos was going to have on the world and the human body. We couldn't let the public know of our findings without a firm grasp on what kind of reality we were facing.
How did the citizenry react? I assume some may have been happy to be rid of the effects of aging, but I heard that even though nobody was getting any older, it was still possible to die of sickness or by accident. And with no new children, the population can only decrease. In the long run, mankind would surely
face extinction. An obvious conclusion. Not what you would call advanced science.
Surely a lot of people despaired when they heard of the truth.
Yes, we knew that as soon as we announced this, people would stop caring about anything and everything. Crime rate and number of suicides would skyrocket. Riots would break out everywhere. We predicted that it would be disastrous to publish our findings, so we took preventative measures, made sure it wouldn't turn out like that.
You're saying you concealed the fact that no one was getting any older?
No, of course not. Even if we hid the truth, it was going to be obvious to everyone that no one was getting older after a few years. We told the public the truth, all of it, held nothing back. But we adorned it with hope, and that hope was the Council of Rebirth.
That was the organisation that grew out of the Academy, wasn't it? You were the leader, and Snow and Noel were part of it too. From what I understand, it served to protect the citizens from the threat of the chaos, and was an organisation that functioned much like the government. But what did you mean by it being hope?
The Council's purpose, above all else, was to save humanity from despair. When we made it known that mankind no longer aged, we also announced the creation of the Council of Rebirth. I made a speech, tried to reach out to the better judgment of the people. If children are no longer born, mankind will eventually die out. Therefore, I ask you for your cooperation, that we may overcome these desperate times together. As we make our stand against the invading chaos, science will reveal the true nature of the chaos to us, and we will find a way to welcome children to this world again. There will come a day when new life is born. To this end, the Council of Rebirth will do whatever it can. That was more or less how it went. Fortunately, the citizens didn't take it too badly. The fact that we were all unaging was now out there in the open. but we saw virtually no adverse effects on society.
Well, you lived up to your name. You gave the people hope.
I already meant it as a joke, but Hope's reaction surprised her. His lips twisted into a self-depreciating smile. Or you could say I distracted them, made them look away from despair. In actual fact, our research on the chaos in our unaging bodies was then rudimentary at best, and we hadn't the least idea when and how we were going to come upon the solution. I couldn't see hope anywhere, but I pretended it was there and in plain sight. I gave them a band-aid for their wounds.
Everyone was living in fear of the chaos, and you tried to shield them from despair. I don't think there was any other way to go about it.
You're right, and that's what I told myself. After creating the council, I was no longer a scientist intent on finding the truth. Instead, I found myself acting more and more like a politician, making compromises, accepting them. And around then, the fallacy suddenly appeared. False hope. Iodi and Hope quickly went over what they knew of the fallacy. At the time, everyone lived in the new cocoon, but eventually it began to show signs of erosion from the effects of the chaos. Left as it was, the new cocoon would eventually cease to function, and mankind would lose the only safe place to live in. And just when the people were beginning to feel uneasy, fallacy pandemonium showed up without warning. It worked the lands, made them habitable, constructed cities, produced food and resources. In other words, it was going to mother us like we were a brood of chicks, to give us the comforts of a nest and a constant supply of feed. It was a siren's call to the people shut away in the new cocoon. The fallacy will generously shelter you and feed you, so come out of the new cocoon. It was a baited hook, and a most obvious one at that.
You knew it was trying to bait you, but in the end, mankind still moved to the surface. That's what I heard from Snow.
Correct. I was the one who made the decision. The new cocoon was beginning to deteriorate from the effects of the chaos, and it was no longer possible to continue to shelter the number of people we had. It was necessary to move the people out, even though we knew there was a risk the fallacy might consume everyone.
There must have been quite the backlash when you told the citizens to leave the safety of the new cocoon and descend to the chaos-infested surface.
Yes, the debates and persuasion spanned several years. In the end, I made a declaration. We have no future if mankind continues to hole up in the new cocoon. We must cultivate the lands and make our stand against the chaos. We will use everything we can get our hands on, fallacy or not. We will not discriminate. We will not choose who to turn out. All citizens will go, as equal men and women, and to prove it, I will be the first to descend to the surface. That was more or less what I said.
And the people were persuaded because you showed them you were willing to go first.
I thought it was a complete farce myself. The words coming out of my mouth sounded noble, virtuous, but in the end, all I did amounted to nothing more than political posturing to win the people over. I sold them false hope, once again. A self-depreciating smile briefly touches his lips for a second time. With that, all of humanity descended to the surface, and the new cocoon was left deserted. On paper, at least.
Only on paper?
A team of scientists, a very small number of them, remained in the new cocoon. I wanted them to make full use of the energy and the state-of-the-art facilities it supplied, and find a way to fight the chaos. Their existence was highly classified information,
We were afraid the Foul Sea might try to do something to us if word somehow got out. That was why the scientists kept all contact with society at the absolute minimum, shut themselves away in the new cocoon, and gave everything they had to the research.
You weren't part of the research team?
I was busy enough keeping the Council of Rebirth together. By that time, I was wholly a politician, inside and out.
Hope then spoke about how he oversaw in secret the research being done in the new cocoon, while making sure as the Council's leader that human society continued to move in the right direction. The citizens made use of the supplies produced by Falsi Pandemonium, but they were careful not to be over-reliant, and made sure that men themselves continued to be the central pillar of support for human society. Their diligence paid off, and 2 cities came into being on the surface, Luxarian and Eusnan.
I know you had help from the Falsi, but I can't imagine actually going out into the world and building a new city, what with all the chaos around you. Mankind must be a lot tougher than I thought. By the way, what was going on with the scientists in the new cocoon?
They were doing their best, but it was rough sailing. We had all the time in the world because we no longer aged, but even after 100 years of research, we weren't making any real headway.
100 years with nothing to show for it. A lot of people must have felt it was pointless and gave up.
But those who stayed were aware of the difficulties they had to face, and were all the more committed to their work. It was thanks to them that we were able to go on with the research. And finally we had a breakthrough. Have you heard of AMP technology?
Let me think. It was common back in Cocoon. Antimatter principle. Working with this principle, you can simulate magic, bend the laws of gravity, all kinds of stuff.
That is correct. We discovered that we could control the chaos with this technology. If it all worked out, the world would never be invaded by the chaos again. We saw it was possible to stop the destruction of the world. More than 300 years had passed since the beginning of the chaotic era, and finally, at long last, we were able to glimpse real hope.
I already thought she knew how Hope must have felt back then. He had been the people's leader, but up until that point he had been lying to his people against his wishes. He could not see hope anywhere in the future awaiting mankind, but he pretended it was there. She wondered if this man, who tried to prevent humanity from slipping into despair, who had to keep lying, she wondered if he had had to live with a guilty conscience of 300 years, even though he knew he had all the justification in the world. If that was indeed the case, when Hope saw it might be possible to prevent the end of the world with the technology to control the chaos, when he saw genuine, honest-to-God hope, it must have felt like salvation to him. But Ayoade already knew the ending to the story. She already knew from her interviews so far that the research was never completed. The hope he wished for was an illusion that never became reality. The rose-haired phantom. The technology to control the chaos was already well within reach, so why was the research never completed? What could have happened? Was the research aborted because you disappeared, or, as they put it, because you had been spirited away?
That only happened much later. The scientists in the new cocoon were the first to go missing. They were made to disappear, one after the other.
Made to disappear? You mean someone killed them?
No, they literally disappeared. No bodies, not even a scrap of their personal effects. They vanished, just like that. The only thing they left behind were a few words. The woman with the rose-coloured hair takes us with her.
This was the message left by the scientists when they began to disappear, one by one. The woman with the rose-coloured hair. The first person I already thinks of is Serah Farron, but she knows it cannot be her because Serah was already dead by then. But there was another person who shared Serah's hair colour, her sister. It couldn't have been Lightning who kidnapped the scientists, could it?
That was what I suspected at first. I wondered if, after a long disappearance, Light came back and was taking them away. But at the same time, I didn't think the real Light would ever kidnap anyone. In any case, I started investigating, tried to understand what was happening. But it was too late. Before I knew it, all of the scientists had gone missing. The new cocoon became a deserted ark, devoid of all human life.
The team of scientists disappeared, and the research to control the chaos ground to a halt. This was when strange things began to happen to Hope, physically and mentally.
The research I had pinned my hopes on went up in smoke, and naturally I fell into a deep depression. That must have created a crack, an opening in my heart, because I began to see the phantom too.
A woman with rose-coloured hair? Was it Lightning?
I cannot say. It only showed as a flash across the edge of my vision. Whenever I tried to discover its true identity, it would be gone the next instant. When I tried talking to it, it disappeared before my voice could reach it. And then, when I'd forgotten all about it, it turned up again. This was how it went, over and over again. There was no end to it, so I decided to ignore the illusion. I pretended not to be bothered by it, even when I could see it, and tried to chase it away from my head.
But when you have to remind yourself not to care about something, you usually end up all the more affected by it. Am I right?
Yes, that's exactly right. It backfired on me. The more I tried not to care, the more I was hooked, and my feelings were slowly reeled out of me. In time, I found myself unable to think of anything but the illusion, and of light. That may be why I began to relive the past in my dreams, with increasing frequency. And once that happened, the illusion I saw started showing up in my dreams too. And there were times when it talked to me like the light I knew from long ago. This continued for many years, and at some point I began to lose my ability to tell memory from illusion. When I tried to recall my memories of light, it became increasingly difficult to tell if it was truly something I'd experienced, or if it was just a dream, a fantasy.
You mean your memories of Lightning were mixed up with the rose-haired phantom?
Not only that, it was getting harder and harder for me to separate dream and reality. I'd hear Light's voice in a dream, and then wake up to find that her voice wouldn't leave my ears, things like that. Put simply, my mind and sanity were falling apart, bit by bit.
I already found this difficult to believe. Not when everyone she had heard from had spoken highly of Hope Estheim's extraordinary intellect and rational mind. And yet, someone was able to send him over the edge, to make him lose sight of the boundary between reality and fantasy. Who could have done it? Who could have snapped Hope's mind, the mind of someone who had up until then steered humanity along, never giving in to adversity? I already knows there is only one answer. But Novelza, the god of light, was behind it all.
That was how God worked.
He may be a god, but he has no direct control over the hearts of men. However, he was capable of creating illusions. He made sure that all who saw his illusions became obsessed as they tried to figure out what they could possibly mean. The victim becomes unable to think of anything but them, and eventually loses all sense of judgment. The mind, exhausted and with nowhere else to turn to, clings desperately to God's illusions.
He drives you into despair, robs you of your reason, controls your mind. And that's a terrifying enemy.
I fell straight into Bonnevel's trap, and when I finally realized what was going on, I was no longer in any position to fight back. The rose-haired phantom that appeared before me, I knew it wasn't light, that it was a dangerous entity out to manipulate my mind, but my heart had already been taken over, and there was no defying it. I left the city one night, led by the phantom calling me, and found myself lured into the new cocoon, by then completely deserted. And there I remained, confined, never to be seen again.
So that was what really happened when you were spirited away? Why did Bonnevelza make you his target? Was your existence that much of an eyesore to him?
He wanted to use me, both as his eyes that would make sure the Saviour acted according to God's plans, and as his chosen vessel that would rule over mankind in the new world.
Was that when you found out Lightning was chosen too to be the saviour?
Yes, ironic, isn't it? I was trapped by the fake light, and that was how I learned that the real light would return, and of the fate that awaited us both. I couldn't allow light to be used that way by him. Not that I could do much about it in my position, since by then I was already a prisoner, but I wanted to at least send hope to my companions, to let them know that light was coming back. So I used the arc system to send a warning to Snow. Lightning will return as the saviour, but beware the fake lightning. I wanted to send a more detailed message, but the communication system went dead just then. And right after that, I lost consciousness. From then onwards, Hope Estheim was brutally tortured in body, soul, and mind. His flesh was torn apart, remoulded and repurposed by Bonnevel's hand to be shaped into his vessel. His mind and senses were forcibly intertwined with God's, and as a result his soul was irrevocably sundered. It took Bonnevelza 169 years, 13 times over, to turn him into a servant, a pawn that met his lofty standards. As the eyes of the radiant god, his role would be to provide insight into mankind's hearts, and to make sure that Lightning, the saviour set to awaken before the world ended, followed their master's plans. Or so Bonnevelza would be made to believe. In the meantime, the chaos continued to corrode everything with increasing speed, and the world rushed headlong into destruction. And then the fated day arrived. 13 years before the end of the world, she awoke. That was the return of Lightning.
Chapter 9. Breathless. Whenever the wind dies down, an unpleasant smell assaults my nostrils. It's the smell of something burning. I try to see what's burning, but I don't find any likely fires around me. I think the smell must have been carried here by the winds from far away, but just as I'm thinking that, it dawns on me. What an idiot I am. The smell is coming from me. The smell of smoke has seeped into my hair and clothes. It must have gotten all over me when I passed the barricade on the corner of the street, just a moment ago.
The militia holed up in the barricade had been burning scraps of old tyre and assorted trash in steel drums. A makeshift smokescreen. Just a few months ago, this was a sleepy, out-of-the-way town. Now it's a complete battlefield. Gunshots, explosions, howls of outrage and screams echo through these old brick streets. And those aren't exclusive to this town either. All the neighbouring provinces, too, have turned into a battleground for violence. This country currently lies divided by a civil war. It started with a relatively peaceful demonstration, but there was a violent crackdown, blood was shed, and that angered the people, turning them into a rioting mob. The government tried to subdue the people with force, but a part of the military sided with the citizens, turned on the government instead. Eventually, the banners of revolution were flown. There was a coup d'etat, and the reins of power changed hands. And this time, the new authority began to crack down on their predecessors. Ethnic feuds from long ago, old hatchets that should have been buried, were dug up. Sparks of conflict flew everywhere. People died in accidental skirmishes, which then became an all-out war. Armed forces were deployed from other countries on the sly, adding fuel to the fire. It was a domino effect arranged by the devil himself. And things got progressively worse until finally everyone's stuck in this quicksand. A civil war going nowhere. There are so many forces in play here, you'd be hard put to tell friend from foe. Nobody knows where the next bullet is going to come from. This is the sort of battlefield I'm reporting from, and I chose to come here of my own free will. I'm staring straight in the face of reality, of the truth behind this world. It's been half a year since the end of my journey. I wasn't able to meet Lightning in the end, but I found out the whole story about the old world from Estheim. He told me everything in his second interview. The story of Lightning's return, her 13 days before the end of the world, the liberation of souls, the battle with God, and our rebirth in a new world. Lightning and her friends fought for us when the old world ended, and thanks to them, we were reborn into this world. This should have been a new world filled with hope. But what's really going on here in this world? I don't know anymore. I've seen too many terrible things on the battlefields. Lightning and her friends defeated Benevelza, the god of light. They ended the age of God's reign over mankind and gifted us with a new world where we can be free. They did all that for us, but look at us now. In a world without God, humans have taken to killing each other. What did they fight for? What was the point? Or is this depressing world exactly what we deserve? Humans are foolish and driven by greed. And this world, this mess of hatred and strife, is this the world tailor-made for humanity? I hear hurried, flopping footsteps coming towards me. The undignified slapping of loose shoes is inevitable. The military boots are a bad fit for their owner. I hear him complain under his breath from time to time about how scarce supplies are and how it's next to impossible to get shoes that fit. The young man running towards me with a gun on his shoulder is a member of the militia, here to ensure my safety while I do my reporting. He told me he's received no training from the military, that up until a little while ago he was only a student. Not even students are spared. They have to take up weapons and fight. This is the reality of this civil war.
This is bad. We're in danger here.
The young man's features are contorted by anxiety. I understand what he means a heartbeat later. A missile lands on the building right across from us. The deafening roar is followed by a violent eruption of smoke, and small pieces of debris rain upon us. The young man is used to this, and he leaps nimbly for cover. but all I can do is stand around stupidly. We were lucky. If the missile had landed just a little nearer, we would have been blown away by the shockwave, or maybe even find ourselves crushed by large chunks of rubble. My luck runs out the next moment. The impact from the blast batters me all over. The second missile explodes nearby, and my consciousness takes flight. I come to myself and stop. I don't know how, but I've been on my feet walking, and I'm not alone. I'm part of a group of a few dozen men, all trudging in the same direction, headed somewhere. I know I was blown away by a missile, and I blacked out after that, but I can't for the life of me recall why I'm walking with these people. Did I wake up and get away, completely delirious, and somehow join this procession? Maybe, in my desperation, I lost my memories. I don't know. It must be the shock from the blast, but I feel light and dizzy. The ringing in my ears is so loud I'd be lucky to be able to hear anything. I stand unmoving, and the group goes on ahead, leaving me behind. A few of them look like soldiers, but citizens make up the overwhelming majority. They must be a band of refugees. I try to look for the young man who was my guide, but I don't see him. Everyone looks completely exhausted. They walk unsteadily, shoulders slumped. "Are you all right? Where are you headed?" I try talking to them, but no one replies. I get nothing from them, not even a sigh. Or maybe someone said something, only I wasn't able to hear them, not with the ringing in my ears. I give up and decide to follow them. We are surrounded by a pale darkness, and it looks like night is almost upon us. I know I blacked out just a little after noon, so I must have been out of it for hours. And it isn't just the passing of time I fail to notice. Somehow or other I've covered some distance. I'd been in the middle of investigative reporting around town, but there isn't a single building to be seen. Not out here among the desolate wilderness. I look up and there's only a dark, cloudy sky. I don't think the sun has set, not yet, but it's nowhere to be seen. Deep, dark shadows puddle about my feet, and I can't see why. Something strange is going on here. Eventually, the road turns into a long uphill battle. The upwards climb knocks the wind out of me, but no one else has to stop to catch their breath. The sound of my ragged breathing mingles with the footsteps of these silent walkers. I make it past the slope and find myself at the top of a small hill. A gasp escapes me. A dark ocean lies before me. Or maybe it's a lake, or a massive river. Beyond the dark waters that flow like darkness itself, shadows hang like a shroud, and I can see neither horizon nor the opposite shore. But one thing's for sure. Lake or river, it shouldn't be here. My work as a reporter brought me to a landlocked region. No big lakes, no rivers, nothing. What ocean is this? I am at a complete loss, but no one pays me any attention. The procession files past me, down the hill and towards the shore. Those leading the way have already reached the surf and are wading into the dark waters. What are they trying to do? This is when I notice one man in particular standing on the shore, watching our progress. He carries his muscular strength like a fortress, and the aura of the unforgiving exudes from him. His violet hair sways gently in the wind, 'a wind, lacking the salty scent of the sea. I stand, rooted to the spot, and stare at him. My presence does not go unnoticed by him either, and our eyes meet. I don't believe I've ever met him, but...
You should know who I am.
His voice comes to me as though it were the rumblings of the ground beneath my feet, from somewhere deep below.
You met them and discovered the truth behind the old world.
His words stir my memory, and I think I know what he's talking about. By them, he must mean Hope Estheim and his companions. How do you know I met them?
Your heart is all too transparent to me. They must have told you. I am that despicable enemy who manipulated the chaos and called forth destruction. My name is already seared unto your memory.
He turns towards me, his right hand outstretched, and gathers the empty air into a fist. It may have been a form of sorcery. I feel a tightness in my chest, as though my heart were caught in the grip of an invisible hand. My heart begins to pound wildly, and I have to struggle to breathe. And a single name floats to the forefront of my consciousness, unwillingly dragged out from the depths of my mind. Caius Ballad! The man who wished for the end of the world. The man who caused the distortion of time. The man who unleashed the destructive force known as the Chaos. At the end of the fight that lasted 13 days, the old world was destroyed, and the souls of men were reborn into this world, with lightning and the others to show the way. But Caius rejected rebirth. He remained in the realm between life and death, and became a shepherd for the souls of the dead. The souls of the dead. Realization hits me like a ton of bricks, and I turn to look at the procession of people I had been a part of. They are headed for the sea, and show no sign of slowing even when up to their ankles in the water, where the waves break again and again on the shore. They march steadily into the depths without hesitation, and one by one they disappear under the waves, sinking into the dark beyond. A smooth and silent procession. Wordlessly they are swallowed whole by the waters, leaving nothing in their wake, not even a single bubble. How could I not have seen it? Not a single one of them had to catch their breath. No one sighed, not once, on the long journey here. These people have already taken their last breaths. So what does that mean for me? Am I not part of the procession too? I refuse to admit it, but realization creeps into my consciousness all the same. The shock of it is too much for me to bear, and my knees begin to tremble. Unable to stand any longer, I drop to my knees. I'm dead. The missile got me. Uncertainty and confusion break over the surface of my mind like waves, leaving my mind a complete blank. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Before I know it, everyone's gone. The dead have all been swallowed by the sea of darkness, and I'm the only one left, on my knees before the god of death.
The dead have all disappeared into the darkness. It is almost time for you to go.
I am crushed by the weight of Caius' solemn words. Go sink in the Black Sea, is that what he's telling me? What becomes of me after that? Will I wander the bottom of the dark waters as one of the dead? Will that be the end of me? I hate this. This isn't how I wanted my life to end. Wait! There's nothing left for me but death. If this is the end of the line, there are things I want to know before my life fades away. Why am I here? Why was I reborn into this world? What was the point? Caius doesn't respond, doesn't react even. Well, I don't care. I continue to vent. The Saviour defeated God in the final 13 days, and we obtained a new world. All of us who lived in the old world, our souls were led here to this world. This should have been a new world filled with hope.
Are you saying it's not?
I saw the true face of this world out on the battlefields. We hate each other, kill each other.
You have merely described a human being. Conflict lies at the core of mankind. Once the gods who used to hold the reins of mankind disappeared, it was only natural for men to fight one another for control.
If what you're saying is true, a world under God would be more peaceful. Was it all a mistake, men defeating God?
No. What am I saying? I met Hope and the others. I know they saved mankind. I know this. I should be grateful to them for bringing our souls here to this world. So why? You say you renounce all they have done, that they should not have defeated Benevelza, the god of light.
No, that's not what I meant. I don't understand. Their intentions were noble and good, but this world is ugly and sad. I can't wrap my head around this.
You are as human as they ever come.
There is a note of disdain in his voice, a hint of derision.
So you despaired over the world you were given and turned your back on it. If it offends you so to live in this world, I suggest you throw yourself into the sea of death.
I sit on the ground, unmoving, as he gestures towards the Black Sea, where the dead are swallowed whole.
The men of lives that are dissolved into the chaos are one day reborn, granted a new lease on life. If you wish it, however, you are also permitted everlasting rest. Do you choose to sleep in the womb of darkness, never to awaken? Your eyes, shut forever, will never have to look upon this hideous world again.
You're telling me that if I choose to sleep, you, the god of death, will grant my wish?
No. You grant your own wishes. If it is sleep you wish for, you may sleep until the end of time. That is all. You know the truth, but you do not see the true essence of things. God does not exist in this world. This is not a world in which men are puppets, manipulated by him. Men, and only men, determine the state of this world. The world is built solely upon their will.
The will of men?
Yes, the world you have rejected is hardly the result of the plans of a wicked god, but the will of men. And you yourself are one of the men who created this world.
The words of the god of death ring in my ears like thunder, and I feel like I've been dealt a blow to the gut. Memories rise from the ashes in the back of my mind. Memories of the smiles of those who had fought in the old world to the very end. Why did I forget? How could I not have seen it? I've met them. I should have understood. My mind is made. I get up and take a step forward. Let's go. Time to go into the dark sea.
I see you have decided to take your leave of this ugly world, forever.
You're mistaken. I look at the sea for a long moment. I'm going in there so I can return. I get to decide where I'm headed. That's what you said. I may be dead now, but if I wish to live again, I can be reborn as a different person.
And once again, the state of the world will send you into despair.
If the world is ugly, I will change it. This is what they taught me. Taken individually, we may be insignificant, but together we have what it takes to change the world. What I have may be small and frail, but I am far from powerless. I can change the world little by little in my own way. I believed that, and that was why I was made for the battlefields. I wanted to show the whole world the truth, draw attention to the merciless reality we were living in. I wanted to increase the number of voices shouting for an end to war. I wanted to help steer the world into a better future. But I was defeated by the cruel and terrible things I saw on the battlefield. I was crushed under the weight of reality, sent to my knees, and I gave up on the future, lost faith in the world. Thank you. I'm glad I was able to talk to you in the end. Thanks to you, I know where I went wrong. I recover myself. I no longer have anything to fear. No doubts either. When I'm born again, next, I won't lose faith. I'll keep my eyes on the future, make my way towards it one step at a time, never abandoning my hopes of changing the world. I promise myself this as I reach the surf and begin to wade into the dark waters. Do you truly wish for death? A thin wisp of a voice murmurs in my ear. Not a single voice, but many. Your life has not faded yet. It is the ghostly voice of a young girl. I am surrounded by layers and layers of this voice, floating to me from both near and far away. You can go anywhere you like. It is your will that shows you the way. I know these voices, these young women, and this is what Caius Ballad, their guardian, then said to me. Live or die, it is your choice to make. Wait, I'm already dead, aren't... The dead disappear in silence. No dead person is as long-winded as you are. In that case, I'm still... Which path will you follow? The decision is yours. I wish to live. The god of death smiled, and it was a gentle smile. The voices of the many Yeuls whisper in my ear. Tell myself to be happy with Noel. I feel my heart beating again. My body is light, and the ground falls away from my feet. The dark sky pulls me in, and I feel myself ascending in the darkness. Somebody is guiding me. I can't see who it is, but I feel the presence of a soft and fluffy whiteness. Whatever it is, it's carrying a rose-coloured light, like a lantern showing me the way, a signpost in the dark. I fly on, and it feels like I'm being led by the hand by this warm presence. Eventually, a tiny pinprick of light appears before me. Like a summer's dawn, the light and heat begin to grow and intensify, even as I watch. Oh, that must be the light of day. It's so bright now I can't keep my eyes open. The white presence that brought me here begins to go away into the darkness. I'm scared and lonely, but a childlike voice speaks reassuringly to me. It's all right. You can go home now, Kupo. I open my eyes. Chapter 10. Passenger. I'm on a train. I was put on the train like a piece of cargo. My hands are cuffed. I'm in a straitjacket, and they're taking me somewhere along with all these other people. Everyone's in their seats, heads and spirits down. The hoods of the restraining suits hide their expressions, so I can't see them. But I know all the faces around me must be coloured with fear and despair. Our peaceful days have been taken from us without warning, and we're about to be exiled, turned out into a world full of danger. Soldiers with guns watch us, alert. Suddenly the train sways violently. The soldiers lose their balance, and in that instant I dash from my seat. I rush at the soldiers, send them sprawling. A soldier falls, loses his grip on a remote control, and I crush it to pieces underfoot. The electrical locks on our handcuffs come undone. The other soldiers are going to come for me any second now. I throw off my restraining suit and make a leap. I land right in the middle of my enemies, and one good kick takes care of the lot. Oh, this is a dream. I realise this as I fire the gun I just stole from an enemy soldier, and as soon as I realise this is a dream, I immediately come to my senses. It was a dream of the old world. It's been some time since that last happened. I think it's because I've been going over the records of my interviews last night. Sazh had given a lively description, mimed it even, of the way lightning stole into the train for the purge, how she made short work of the soldiers. In the end, I still haven't published the results of those interviews. The bond between Lightning, Sazh, Hope and the others, the bond they shared. Their bond is a story of how men banded together to stand against God. And I know that if I share it with the entire world, it will be a source of courage and hope for the people. But I also know that once I do that, all eyes will be trained on Lightning and her friends, whether they like it or not. It troubles me to disturb their peaceful lives, not when all of the fighting's finally behind them. So, in other words, I went to great pains to get my interviews, uncover the truth, but ultimately couldn't bring myself to publish my findings. I fail as a journalist, I know. I won't deny it. I'm too many steps removed from what a journalist's supposed to be these days. The old me, the person I used to be, I think maybe she died on that battlefield. I was reporting on the Civil War when I almost brought it, and after allowing myself the minimum amount of medical treatment and rest, I went straight back into the battlefield. Those around me tried to stop me, but I didn't listen. I approached the opposing forces and did my best to get everyone's side of the story out, without bias. I made sure to keep a neutral stance, to keep any kind of slant out of my reports, and to avoid setting any side up as the bad guys. I was careful to cover every possible angle. My efforts to stay absolutely neutral paid off, I think, because somehow or other I earned the trust of the various forces. They began to speak frankly to me, and I heard that many of them didn't want to fight at all. Only problem was, they never found a way to sit down and talk with their enemies. And that was where I came in. I took on the role of the mediator. I stood in the middle, among all of the forces in play, and as I carried out my duties as a reporter, I also delivered messages, arranged for negotiations, fixed for them to get in touch with each other. I was just the go-between, but I was also getting into the neck of things with the principal actors of war. I'm pretty sure I've already violated the ethics code all journalists strive to protect, the necessity to take the objective view at all times. Worse still, if things don't work out, I may very well stand accused of having been complicit in a war crime. I knew all that, and wasn't troubled in the least. I wanted to help bring about an end to the Civil War. So here I am, in the middle of preparations for an important meeting. The plan is to have all the parties involved come together in another country, away from the battlefields, and have them sit down and talk. I don't know if this is going to work. I can't even rule out the possibility that there may be assassins out to get me, courtesy of those who want to sabotage the negotiations. But it doesn't matter if I end up killed. All that means is that I'll be meeting Caius Ballad again. If I bite the dust while walking on the path I believe to be right, so be it. I think I'll be able to stand before the god of death with pride in my eyes this time. I'm not so vain as to think that I can change the world all by myself, but I believe that I can help steer the world in a better direction. That's the courage, the hope I found in the story of the old world. Every time I think of that story, my heart brightens a little. I'm just coming out of dreamland, and I wish I could have had a little more sleep. I really want to get some rest on this train ride. Work kept me up late last night, and there's an important meeting waiting for me where I'm headed. It had been a pleasant doze. I was able to relax in the comfortable train seats and feel the rhythmical duet of wheels and rail drum through me. It was nice, and I wish it didn't have to end. I close my eyes, and for a while I give myself over to the rock and sway of the train. At some point, an intense light pierces through my eyelids. I'm drenched by the sunlight filtering in through the window. I reluctantly open my eyes and look out. The skies are a clear blue, and the verdant countryside spreads before me, under the bright, clean sunlight. I'll only get to my destination sometime in the evening, so that's still a long ways off. Shouldn't hurt to catch a few more Z's in the meantime. Eventually, the train begins to slow, little by little. We must be nearing the next station. I hear footsteps approach from behind, then go past me. Must be a passenger getting off. Through the dividers of my box seat, I catch a glimpse of the back of a light coat. A woman with hair the colour of roses. I'm wide awake the next instant. It strikes me like lightning. I jump to my feet like I'd been burned and whisper in a daze. "Lightning." She stops. She turns towards me, a sharp look on her face. I don't blame her. I'd have my defences up too if a stranger called out to me without warning. But under that hard expression, I think I see a hint of Serah Farron there too. It's lightning, no question about it. Her name came up in every single one of the interviews I conducted. It's ironic. I wanted so badly to meet her, but couldn't find my way to her. And now here I am, face to face with her by complete accident. She doesn't say anything. I begin to talk. "I've always wanted to meet you. I met with everyone, but you were the only one I couldn't get to." She seems to know what I'm talking about. "I see, so it's you." The edge in her look fades away. "The reporter who's been calling on everyone and wants to meet me." "Ah, yes. I've heard about you." "Please, I would very much like to interview you." A deafening screech from the rails drowns out my voice. The train is quickly losing speed. We're reaching the next stop. She steals a glance out the window and shakes her head. "Sorry, but I don't have time to chat. This is my stop." "Then I'll come with you. I'll—" "Get off here too." I'm just about to say this when it hits me. This is incredible luck bumping into lightning here, after all those dead ends trying to get a lead on her. It probably isn't going to happen again, so I can't let this meeting slip through my fingers. But right now, I have to look away in disappointment. With a sigh, I force out the words. "I understand. It's really too bad, but I suppose I can't always have it my way." "You sure?" She sounds more surprised by this than I am. I don't think she expected me to back down so easily. I am disappointed, of course, but this isn't my stop. I have a mission. There's someone I need to meet at my destination, and that's still a long ways off. I have to meet this person and find a way to stop that war. It's my duty. There's no guarantee that my actions, insignificant as they are, will end the war, but I've made up my mind to try. I'll find the path that leads to an end to the war and go down it as far as I can. That's the mission I've given myself. The people wishing for peace are waiting for me at the end of this road. I can't afford to get off before my stop. I raise my head and look at Lightning. There are things I have to do. I'll take a rain check on that interview, if that's all right with you.
I'm not so sure about that.
Her words are a little standoffish, but her voice is gentle. She hasn't rejected me outright, at least. There's something I want you to know. I've always wanted to say this to you if I ever met you. We're almost at the station now, and the train's about to come to a complete stop. There isn't time. The sound of the screeching brakes tells me I have to hurry, and my words tumble out in a rush. No, all of us, mankind, humanity, we're all right. We're definitely going to be all right. There are times when we make one mistake after another, when we hurt each other. But even so, this world that you and your friends won in your victory over God, this world is built on us. We're the ones supporting this world. We're the scaffolding. So we'll try to sort this world out with what little strength we have by ourselves. We may be small and insignificant on our own, but together we'll make the world a better place. I understand. It's on you now. She nods and turns away from me. That was a goodbye. I watch from the window as Lightning steps onto the platform and walks away. The train begins to move and I immediately lose sight of her. Strangely enough, I find myself without regrets. The expression on her face when we parted ways is seared under my memory, and I can still see it. It was a warm, gentle smile, and to be honest, it caught me by surprise. I'd always imagined Lightning to be strict and exacting, never one to let her guard down. I never thought she'd smile like that. And it occurs to me, her fight ended in the old world. Lightning sent the god of light to his grave, and by doing so freed herself from all the fighting. And she wasn't the only one who attained freedom either. God, the manipulator of men, was defeated, and all human souls broke free from God's leash, to be reborn here in this new world. That includes her. She's been reborn too. She no longer has to fight. Maybe Lightning is not the name she goes by anymore. A quiet life, her heart open to friends and family, people that mean the world to her. Happy smiles shared all around. I'm sure that must be her life now. I have a feeling I'll meet her again somewhere, someday. I've never been able to get any leads on her, and even now, after bumping into her by accident, I still don't have her address. In spite of all this, I'm absolutely certain this isn't going to be the last time we meet. She knows who I am. She must have heard about me from one of her friends. The bond between them is as strong as ever, even after their rebirth here in this world. If I visit her friends again, I'm sure I'll be able to meet her somewhere. They're still comrades after all, and will always be a part of one another. It occurs to me to wonder why she got off at that station. Is she going to meet someone? Is one of her friends waiting for her? Or is she off to meet a special someone I don't know yet? It doesn't matter which. She's free now. She can go anywhere, meet anyone. What she wishes for will definitely come true. I want that for her from the very bottom of my heart. The will of men determines the fate of this world without God. If this is true, I choose to believe that if I strongly wish for it, an ever more brilliant future awaits her. May this woman, who was once a brilliant flash of light in the old world, chance upon hope. This was my wish, and it was like a prayer, a promise. The end. Bonus. Excerpt from Famitsu's interview with lead scenario writer Daisuke Watanabe. Famitsu. So that's how you felt, haha. Any other lines, scenarios, that left an impression on you? Which scenes did you especially like? Watanabe. For Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy XIII, the ending, beginning from the final boss battle. To tell you the truth, I'm horribly slow when it comes to writing the script, and that made things difficult for everyone, so I thought, I have to write something incredible to make up for all the trouble we've caused. And that was how I was finally able to write something I could accept. There were a lot of characters I'd known for a long time, so it was a trip down memory lane writing their lines, and out of all of them, Snow's events left an especially deep impression on me. Up till now, he's always had to take on a thankless role because I wasn't able to give him scenes that would make him look cool. But his relationship with Lightning, I really like that feeling of distance between them. There's a scene in Final Fantasy XIII where they go to Hope's house. There is a short conversation after Snow wakes up where Lightning apologises. Snow tells her, "If you tell me your real name, I might just forgive you." Instead of getting on his high horse and telling her, "I forgive you." And Lightning, who had been feeling depressed, retorts, "Don't get ahead of yourself." And with that, the tension fades. It was a lot of fun for me to write a proper, pure friendship between a man and a woman for Lightning and Snow. And then there's Hope. Hope is the one who completes Lightning's character. If Lightning hadn't met Hope at the beginning of Final Fantasy XIII, she would have remained unfinished somehow, and I think she would have thrown herself blindly at the army and died. Famitsu. I see, that makes sense. Watanabe. Hope tagged along after her, and how should I put it? That flipped Lightning's guardian switch, haha. The smile Lightning let show when Hope was asleep at the Vile Peaks when they were on the run, I actually wrote, "This is the first time Lightning smiles in-game," in the script, and that's when the switch was flipped. I personally think that smile was the moment Lightning's character finally be able to stand on its own. Famitsu. This novel hints at the possibility that maybe Hope hasn't met Lightning yet. Watanabe. I don't like to write things were like this or that, and have everything that goes on after the ending officially spelled out, so there are a few places in the novel where I left things open to the reader's interpretation and imagination. But if I leave things too ambiguous, it would be a cop-out, so it's difficult to find the right balance, and this is something I will always have to struggle with. This time, however, I deliberately chose to leave most things to the reader, so, for example, there are almost no descriptions of the characters' appearances. Famitsu. I think that's also what makes novels so interesting as a medium. Is there anything else you wrote with special attention to the novel? Watanabe. If I had to pick one, the last sentence, the part where she goes, "She will chance upon XX. Famitsu. I see what you mean. Watanabe. I really don't like to put too much down on paper and have it made official. Haha, I would rather the readers guess for themselves who she is meeting. I would be very happy if everyone enjoyed this story.